Good evening, members, and welcome to the second of BCP's Overview and Scrutiny Board of today. A special warm welcome to any members of the public and the press that may be tuned in and watching this on YouTube. My name is Councillor Steve Butler. I'm the chairman of this board, and I'm looking forward to some interesting presentations on the agenda regarding tourism. But before we move on to the agenda, I'd just like to ask our Democratic Services Officer, Claire Johnson, to give us a brief on how this meeting will be conducted this evening. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Board is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to do so by the Chairman. Always turn on your video function when invited to speak. Please state your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Some people may need to dial into the meeting and will therefore not have the benefit of visual. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. If you would like to speak on an item, please do so by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. The messaging bar should not be used unless you are raising a point of order or providing the wording for a motion. Please remember that this panel is visible to all and subject to public information requests. If at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand feature again. If a vote is required on any item, the Democratic Services Officer will call out each board member's name, beginning with the Chairman and Vice Chairman. Please respond with for, against or abstain. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Moving on then to agenda item 1, apologies. I understand that Councillor Mike Cox has offered his apologies. Are there any others that you're aware of, Claire?
Correct, Chairman. No further apologies.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, substitute members. I understand that Councillor Toby Johnson will be substituting for Councillor Mike Cox.
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Members, do any members have any declarations of pecuniary interest that they wish, or local interest that they'd like to declare for any items on the agenda? Councillor Jackie Edwards, you've indicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just for reasons of transparency, I work in the hospitality tourism industry.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Also, just for transparency, I am on the local FA and chair of Sport Pool, and they come under Councillor Iyengar's portfolio. Thank you, Chair. Thank
you very much, Councillor Johnson. Okay, so we now come on to the substantive item for this evening. A Cabinet Member report from Councillor Iyengar. Looking forward to the brief that we're going to get from him. Councillor Iyengar is the portfolio holder for tourism, leisure and culture. And this is one of a series of briefs that we've had from portfolio holders. And we did ask members to submit questions ahead of this briefing this evening. And I note that Councillor Edwards has submitted quite a few, which I understand you're going to address this evening, Councillor Iyengar. Thank you. With no further ado, I'd like to invite Councillor Iyengar to make his presentation to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and members. Good evening, everyone. May I ask Claire, I have the presentation on my deck, or will you share it? How should we do this, please?
I can make you a presenter, Councillor Iyengar, and if you're happy to share it.
Okay, thank you very much. So, good, the button's activated there.
Okay.
Good, and hopefully everyone can see this, and I'll go into presentation mode. Is that, Chairman, can you see the opening slide there?
Yes, I can. I'm not sure I can see all of it. That might be something to do with me.
I've put it on display slide presentation mode. Is that correct?
I haven't got a clue. Sorry. I can't see all of the slide. What about other members?
It's only consolation, Chair. I can see it all.
Yeah,
I can see it all.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go with it then. Thank you.
All right. If you're happy, Chair, I'll continue. Thank you very much. Okay. Once again, evening, everyone. I've got around maybe I think it's sort of 11, 12, 13 slides here to go through, and I'll do one complete pass through the portfolio. I'm following closely the questions that were in the brief from Democratic Services, which is to look at the current priorities, look at the forward-looking priorities, and then at the risk of duplicating a little, coming on to where I'm inviting scrutiny. Now, of course, I say that, of course, overview and scrutiny members are welcome to scrutinise and question and challenge me on any area of the portfolio, but I hope maybe it may be helpful to sort of point you to some particular areas where I would very, very much value the committee's challenge, the committee's ideas in helping us move this portfolio forward. Thank you. So I have two slides to start with on the current priorities. And what you'll see, if I can just quickly go to flick slide 1 and slide 2, and please just look at the main headings so that we can navigate ourselves here. The first one, I'll be looking at current priorities in the tourism sector. You can see there in the black. The second main heading is Seafront. Let me just quickly go into slide 2, which is physical exercise, cultural expression, and libraries. So there's 5 main headings which I've threaded through this presentation. So back to slide 1, current priorities, an outline of current priorities, including identification of risks, challenges, and opportunities. So first of all, in the tourism sector, no one in this room needs any reminder at all of what is first and foremost for tourism, for the sector, for the providers, who've had the most horrible experience imaginable over the past year, and which of course is still continuing until they're able to start earning revenue again. So support for tourism, for hospitality providers, and for business improvement districts, of which we have 2 and a third coming on the way. Sorry, we have 3 and a 4th coming on the way across BCP. Support for tourism, we know that we've had the grant system through the government administered through economic development. What we've also had is more recently the announcements of things like Festival Coast Live, the Futures Fund, and obviously with the approval of the budget, our ability to support monetarily and with our encouragement, our backing, the help of our officers on such things as licensing and various other things to actually really engender the fastest sort of, growth back of the tourism sector that we possibly can. So support for tourism, quite rightly there, is number 1 in my portfolio. The second thing, Festival Coast Live, and you may say this is within heading number 1, is expansion of events and offerings. There was a presentation members may have seen a couple of weeks ago on what we're looking at for the next year, of course, coming out of COVID, to literally not be stalling, dragging our feet, but how can we engineer the fastest possible recovery? But there's more to Festival Coast Live than just the immediate year. And if my colleague Beverly Dunlop was here, she'd be saying, actually, this is more about the current year, but actually going forward 2 to 3 years and thinking, how can we actually get arms around a broader, richer, more varied, and more reaching into our communities kind of events programme going forward, and events going from the largest events, of which we obviously know which ones they are, through to the smallest events, almost micro community events, and not necessarily on the seafront, of course, but how can we reach into those and start bringing people, getting them noticed, bringing them forward and having those people engaged. Okay, so Festival Coast Live, I'll say more about that in the subsequent slides. The third one is destination marketing. Credit here to events, marketing, communications teams, and everyone on the seafront as well. Literally doing a hell of a lot of work at the moment to shape our messages and chisel our messages, and not simply linked to COVID, but actually linked to BCP being not just one resort, but actually a collection of small resorts, which is a leading overall destination in the UK, and not just in the UK, but internationally as well. And I'll say more about that shortly, and I'll obviously welcome questions on that. But there's a lot of very exciting things that I see coming out from our comms and events teams on this. The second main heading, Seafront. If we're encouraging and putting a lot of things on for people, we've got to be ready for visitors when they actually do come. And in a short slot like this, I really can't do justice to this heading, other than to say that officers led by Kate Ryan, Service Director Kelly Ansell, and teams across transportation, across environment waste, across, forgive me, I'll probably miss out some people here, but the parks and open spaces. I think I've covered transportation, haven't I? A whole range of people have been involved in designing the arrangements for how we're going to be ready for people when they come. Now, of course, they've already started coming, haven't they, the last weekend, but more relevantly from the dates which the Prime Minister has laid out for lockdown being eased, to actually tangibly put in place our readiness. And of course, what are we talking about here when I say readiness? It's things to do with people, it's to do with beach officers, other officers, it's to do with CSOS officers, security staff, marshals, volunteers of all sorts, and last but most certainly not least is police officers. How can we have them along the seafront and inland from the seafront in preparation and also in response as well? There's a very, very large arrangement that has been put together, and at some point fairly soon, and I've got to work this through with the officers, fairly soon we'll be in a position to announce what the whole regime of arrangements will be. I've talked about the people there, but of course we also come to other things. It embraces things like signage, it embraces things like some of the more stronger arm things to do with parking enforcement, towaways and the like, and how we will basically signpost people as they come towards our resorts in all their various forms, and how we will, politely but with quite a firm hand, encourage and take action to ensure the right behaviours are happening on our seafront. Back of all this, everyone, can we guarantee the outcome? No, we can't guarantee outcomes on this, but what we can do is make sure that we're as well prepared as we could have been in hindsight, and we did everything that was reasonably possible. And again, I'm very happy to take questions on this. Going down to the second heading, operations and commercials. We are, like several councils along the coast of the UK, heavily dependent upon external income. Car parking is our number one income, and just behind the car parking and external income is what we earn on the seafront, which is beach huts, which is concessions, which is in the heyday, things like Crazy Golf, things like the casinos and so on and so forth, totaling £8 million. And of course, that's a revenue budget that's a revenue stream that's taken an enormous hit in COVID. And of course, quite rightly, as you'd expect, we've gone to the government to look for some kind of alleviation, some kind of help to make sure our finances aren't damaged too much. But this is one of the reasons that we need some kind of bounce back or Festival Coast Live to happen, so that we can start repairing our finances on this side. The third heading, seafront projects. Quite an exciting bunch of projects we've got coming forward, and if I cut to the end point on seafront projects, a challenge for me is to make sure that we have some coherence through all of these projects. And please, I don't mean to imply that there isn't that coherence, but I think that these projects, it's fair to say, have emerged at different times, at different paces, sometimes from different influences, and all of them good, I would have to say. But I think if someone was to challenge me and say, do they all represent like a coherent style and a coherent theme going through BCP, I'd probably have to say, no, we still need to actually retrofit that to these projects. But some of them, they're really excellent projects. Durley Environmental Hub, of course, COVID notwithstanding, we were looking to get that on the start construction in spring. We're going to be a little bit delayed with that, but an excellent project with some very, very senior backing to that. Southbourne Bistro further along up the east side there to replace what's there with something modern, something bigger, and something that makes that a little bit more of a destination than it already is. Muddyford Beach restaurant, of course, aside from the sort of fairly horrific events that affected Muddyford Spit very recently, we're looking there to obviously refresh the beach restaurant that's already there. Camphor Cliffs Pavilion, I'm very pleased we managed to accommodate the open water swimmers there, to put a changing shelter for them in there, and we'll do something kind of small but modest in Camphor Cliffs. And Sandbanks Pavilion is on a longer horizon, which is to see what we can do there, while of course protecting the sort of listed status of that building. Okay. So Seafront projects, and there's more to come there. And the last one on this is support to tenants, franchisees and contractors along the seafront, both physically in terms of the maintenance of their own facilities, but also in terms of sort of monetarily, how we can kind of, without compromising, what the council needs to do in terms of rents and so forth, is to make sure that our tenants along the seafront are supported, encouraged along, and they have a constant liaison with us. Okay, so the next slide. Current priorities. So the next three headings: physical exercise, cultural expression, and libraries. On the physical exercise, again, there's a pair of tourism operators. Our leisure and exercise providers in the private sector, that is BH Live and SLM, aka Everyone Active in Poole, and of course we run our own Two Rivers Meet facility in Christchurch. But there's a whole raft of leisure and exercise providers. I've just mentioned the three main providers of gyms, but this is a broader heading that includes everyone and anyone who operates on the water, on our open spaces, in our parks, whether it be providing sort of sailing lessons, sailing facilities, whether it be runners clubs, whether it be cycling clubs. All of them are leisure and exercise providers. And one thing I'll come to is that we have an enormous challenge in our conurbation, where, if we like anywhere else, the whole nation's fitness has dropped 2 notches over the past year and a half, and we've got a challenge to get that back. And there's something that we've got to do, driven in this portfolio, to get everyone's exercise back up to where it was before and take it up higher still. So the second bullet in there then, of course, is support for exercise spaces, facilities and organisations, outdoor and indoor, during lockdown. And again, we can't get those places open fast enough, safely, of course. The next heading, cultural expression. Parallel again with the previous one, support for arts, cultural and heritage organisations during lockdown, whether it's Regent Theatre, Shelley Theatre, helping them, whether it's the Lighthouse, whether it's the Pavilion, whether it's well, the various other places I can think of. And of course, we've got Upton House, we've got Highcliffe Castle, various others. All of them, I've pledged that we're not going to let any of them go down over this time, and I think we've held true to that. We've got to keep them. We've got to keep them financed, we've got to keep them safe, and we've got to keep them going into the future. Did I miss Russell Coates from that? No slight was intended at all. I've just remembered it, and I'm so sorry to the committee of Russell Coates. All of them are absolutely special, and they've got to be championed. I was on the TV just fairly recently, and I was challenged quite rightly by the BBC presenter. How on earth can councils justify investing in this area during COVID, and when there's so many other needs? Of course there are. And I said that we can't take a short-term view about this. We've got to think long-term about these things, and if they're gone, they're gone, and we will regret it if they're gone. And we have to protect for the longer term these things, these organisations and what they represent. The second heading on here is mobilisation of cultural compact. This is something else in here that I can't do justice to in a short presentation like this, but cultural compact is big, broad, deep. It's long as well. It encompasses 3 main headings, which is number 1, how we make an input into our open spaces, our places, our venues going forward that allow cultural expression. Number 2 is how we foster clubs, associations and networks of people so that great cultural ideas and energy can take flight. It can actually get momentum and people can actually make their ideas happen. And the third thing is at a micro level about talent. How do we encourage people from the most casual to the most advanced level to, in the broadest sense, to do their thing, to find their expression and to have the encouragement and the financial means if necessary to be able to do that. And we want to be able to see people staying here, developing whatever they do to the best of their ability, and then not be going elsewhere, and they can actually do that thing here. And that's a vision for Cultural Compact. The third heading down, delivery of Poole Museum and Scaplan's Court project. Very exciting project. Of course, in a narrow footprint there at the bottom end of the high street, but I'm very, very excited by what Michael and the team have put together. And there is a commercial benefit here, increasing footfall and generally generating higher positive profile for that part of Poole in the Old Town. And the fourth one, last but certainly not least, is Russell Coates Art Gallery and Museum. Very different, of course, to Poole Museum, a much more eclectic mix of things there, but very, very special, Russell Coates. And we're working with them to assist their transition to an independent charity status, whereby they can, as it were, take flight through a sort of a looser governance from the council and more ability to seek their own future and to obviously source extra funding as well. Libraries, the fifth heading, last but definitely not least, staff support to communities and the COVID effort while libraries are closed. Great credit here to Libraries Manager Mehdi and the staff involved in the libraries. They've been some of the most fungible staff in the council. Fungible, by that I mean willing to, in a sense, go anywhere and go everywhere wherever help is needed. Many of them have helped out in the Together We Can network, and many of them are still doing that now. And I know that Mehdi is now in discussions with me and with Chris, the service director, looking for now when we can open the library safely as soon as we possibly can. So fantastic work there from the library staff. Readiness to resume for services at the earliest opportunity. And this is one of the transformational projects at the bottom there, support for the integration of customer service and libraries functions. And if I can sort of, go off script a little bit on this one, it's funny if when this first came along, it was one I had mixed feelings about with this one, because the positive of this project was, in a sense, for some libraries, it took away sort of any doubt, oh, are they continuing or not? Well, they are continuing. They are all continuing. And this one, in a sense, increases their importance in their communities by having customer service in there as well, because people will come who didn't actually come to the library before. They will see the library function. They will do more in it. And for me, that is the positive of it. The downside is I want to be sure as PFH for the libraries that the whole ethos behind libraries and what they represent and something to do with the kind of the atmosphere, the style of a library is not compromised in this project either. So there's a positive and there's a negative, and we've got to watch the downside on that. Okay. Next slide. Future priorities and portfolio development. I'll try and not repeat committee members on this, otherwise it sort of gets too much, doesn't it? In the tourism sector, refine our destination strategy. Now that we have our big plan, which has been approved through the council, what we'll do is now just link up to that the destination strategy, which has been championed through the Destination Management Board. I understand many of you will know that is a sector-led board chaired by the hospitality sector, by David Bailey. And we have the destination strategy now due to be completed, and all well and good there. Development of Bournemouth International Centre, the BIC, wonderful site, fabulous site. I think someone told me it's pretty well the only significant conference venue, entertainment venue that is right beside a beach. Okay, so we've got that as our natural advantage. Now what we need on there is a building, facility, a hub, a destination to be absolutely proud of. So there is a large project that's in discussion at the moment, and you'll be hearing more about it in due course, for what we can put on that site that is going to make us absolutely proud of that location and the interest it will generate and the people we can have coming there to perform. Okay, and the third thing is expansion of the range and diversity of events, and this is an echo of what I was saying on Festival Coast Live as well, and the key to that being the range and the diversity, not just more of the same. Second heading, Seafront. Just a reminder there, consolidate the Seafront projects into a single programme, and I've probably been a bit firmer here with clearer definition and benefits. It sounds a little bit harsh, that does, but that is what I'm trying to thread through all of those projects. And of course, that will then suggest which others we need to have. Refine the policies for the use of the prom, beach and car parks. Some of that is a carryover from having 3 councils and now just coming forward to 1 council. But equally, this is not just a harmonisation. It's actually about making them progressive, fit for purpose, simple, transparent, all those things as well. And the third one there within that is refinement of the business and operational model for beach huts. We have too many variants, we have too many prices, too many different types of beach huts, and it's kind of confusing, even though we have a beach hut portfolio that's the envy of many places across the rest of the UK and further, but it could be simplified and it could be maybe even better. Okay, physical exercise. Okay, let me just stop here for a second. Chairman, am I okay with this? Is this helpful for people?
Sorry, I'd lost my mouse marker. No, you carry on, it's fine.
Okay, is it all right? Okay, thank you, Chair. If there's anything you want me to sort of do differently, please say. Okay, physical exercise. Now, there is something probably transformational that we do need to think about, leisure centre offerings and providers, and probably just suffice to say we have 3, the legacy of it is we have 3 different ownerships of the leisure centres going forward, and also, should I say there, 3 different operators of our leisure centres. Okay, all of them are actually owned. We're the landlord for all of them. And there's probably something around also the facilities themselves, is that they all need upgrading, the facilities. And I'm talking about the council responsibility for doing that, for upgrading them and for sort of, you know, really souping up the maintenance on them. There is, though, the opportunity, though, to just to really advance this whole area and think about what should the provision for leisure centres be? What should it be going forward in terms of the types of exercise, but more broadly, the types of experience that people can have when they go to visit a leisure centre and the surrounding area? And I'm talking here exercise, well-being for a very broad range of people, of all ages, of all abilities, and where there's something close to everybody as well. And this gets us into the transformational space, where we're thinking not just what people do when they go and visit, but as our providers have managed recently, what can they also do online as well? Because I am hoping that certain things that have actually emerged online during COVID are actually here to stay as well. So people can do a mixture of online things and actually go and visit things as well. Okay, so that's quite an exciting story there that's going to emerge sometime in the months ahead, 6 months ahead. Okay, and the second bit of that, campaign for developing outdoor exercise and broader well-being. So much we're talking about gyms, my biggest preference is to be in the outdoors, whether it's walking or doing something other things, many other things. And this is where there's a link now with other portfolios, and just thinking of our entire green spaces, our beach, our paths, our cycleways, all of them, and making an input into how easy they can be, how encouraging they can be, how inviting they can be for people to do their outdoor exercise. And some of you may have seen my press releases recently on whether it's to do with Beta, whether it's to do with Kings Park Athletics Track, whether it's to do with our outdoor playing pitches strategy, that we want to encourage people to take their outdoor exercise as often as they can, in the way that they prefer. And that's not a bad goal for BCP residents. 4th heading, cultural expression. Implementation of all aspects of the cultural compact. We are going for this. So input into the longer term development of buildings, sites, highways, open spaces and heritage. So some of the longer term things is that input into the local plan, input into major transport plans, which is how we're designing these things in such a way that encourages and certainly doesn't inhibit cultural expression. The shorter term things are things that we can do with people, and things like, for instance, pop-up sites and things about how we can encourage networks, clubs, associations to develop. And obviously, of course, before anyone says it, there's a link here with the universities and the colleges as well. They're absolutely integral to this. Okay, I mentioned development of groups and organisations, and then the third one down is mechanism to protect and develop cultural talent, and hopefully that sort of speaks for itself. Okay. And the final heading on there, libraries, evolution of the library service within common service hubs. We want our library service to be strong and as robust and as progressive as it can be. Okay. Areas of overview and scrutiny. And you can see members here. I won't sort of labour it by talking through every single point on here, but what I absolutely welcome is all forms of challenge and ideas, but ideas and challenge for the evolution of tourism. How can we do it while fulfilling all those objectives there? For the regeneration of physical exercise across all of our residents, from the trough that nationally, locally we are in now, and ideas and challenge for cultural expression to flourish here across BCP. And there's no reason, back of all this, everyone, there's no reason that we should, on these three headings, we should not be a leading light in the UK. And there are several things that we won't try to be in the UK. I don't think we'll ever be the transport crossroads of Britain down in this neck of the woods on the south coast here. And there's a few other things that we won't be. But I would challenge anyone, please, to say why we cannot be absolutely eminent in all these three here, and for people of all ages, of all types, of all abilities. Okay, thank you. What I've got now, Chairman, is the next slides are my written answers to the questions that were submitted. Would you like me to pause there, or shall I go to the questions?
I think if we just pause there and we can come back, let's just give members an opportunity to comment on the presentation that you've made thus far. Councillor David Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I wonder if Mohan casinos we own, he mentioned earlier on in his piece, quite early on, that we get a lot of our income from car parks, seafront, what we do, and casinos. I'm not actually aware that as BCP we actually have any casinos. I'd like him to inform us, please.
Okay, bad choice of words. I meant the gaming, and of course that's a tenant and literally there, just on the prom there.
You mean the amusement arcade?
Excuse me, I meant that. I do apologise.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Howell.
Thank you. I'd just firstly like to thank Councillor Anger for a very well put together presentation. In terms of a vision and objectives, I think it's excellent. My questions will be about delivery. I have two particular questions. Firstly, I'm aware that the council doesn't currently have the people power to deliver the cultural objectives, and therefore I'm interested in how he sees it being delivered, given it's going to be, we want to do this as quickly as possible. So is he envisaging that we will recruit more to the council? Is he envisaging that this is going to be run through the cultural compact, or are we going to outsource this to private sector and community organisations to deliver? The second question was in relation to leisure, and I'm particularly interested in understanding how we attempt to make a step change in terms of people doing exercise. We've been in a situation, I think, for a number of years where we've focused on kind of keeping the facilities at a steady state, and they're not envisaging catering for more people. And a lot of, I need more information on this, but I suspect that a lot of people that we encourage to do exercise are already doing exercise, and it's really difficult to get the people to switch over who are not doing exercise, and how we do that. But if they do, if we are successful, we will need more provision and perhaps different types of provision. So yeah, those two questions, please.
Okay, thank you, Mark. On the first question on this, first of all, we have budget to recruit people. What was approved in the budget was the 150k for the year ahead, and that will be used. There's a breakdown, of course, for it. Some of that will be used to actually deploy officers new officers, dedicated officers, to actually moving the compact forward. And just the detail of that actually came in the cultural compact papers. But just, you know, I totally accept your challenge. Those people aren't in place yet. The recruitment is underway. They're about to be in place. I think it's still a few weeks away when that's going to happen. So the first thing is actually to have those officers sort of within the council pushing it forward. Okay. Now, let me quickly go to a second answer on that, is that as well as the money for at least maybe one or two to three officers doing that, there's something that's got to be in the ethos of Cultural Compact, which is not sort of heavy-handed by the council. And I think, you know, unless I'm wrong, Mark, I think this is something where this is the ethos. I think you were, under your leadership, you were trying to sort of, you know, infuse into the thinking as well. And if I've got that right, I actually agree with that as well, because the council should do some of it and be there maybe underneath it is probably the best way, supporting it. But I think that not only next year's money, but the year after has got to be, how are we doing that? And I haven't yet worked out in what format. How can we do that to sort of encourage others along, whether it's money to little groups or associations or money to individuals, maybe on a freelance basis, to actually be sort of co-working and driving forward the compact. So not people sort of at the end of a spoke, as in, you know, performers just doing their thing or doing their performance, but actually being part of sort of the engine room of the cultural compact. And I haven't got any more detail, I haven't worked that out yet, but it's going to start with officers, but it's rapidly going to sort of, in a controlled way, going to go out sort of embracing others as well. Happy to say more on that if I've not answered that fully. On the second one, on the one about exercising and encouraging people, I also think that one of the problems, not just here, but pretty well everywhere, is that you know, advertising about leisure is a bit like sort of brand marketing. It's people who already do it, and they're going from, I won't name them, but from one brand of leisure club to another brand of leisure club and so on, with extra enhanced facilities. And what that leaves is just an enormous, you know, swathe of people for whom either it's, you know, this kind of marketing is either not interesting or it's sort of not engaging them in any way. All right. There's something here about having a completely different attack on this, and one that's got a strong link to public health, I think. So in the same way that I think actually some of the thinking about how can, for instance, our link with public health, the NHS, with doctors' surgeries and so on, how can we understand where people already, for instance, you know, have a certain prescription, or they've got literally as part of their sort of their rehab, as part of their get better, exercise is a part of that. How can we actually get ourselves into that sphere? And that sphere actually touches most people in our conurbation. Now, as we stand, I don't quite know how to get into that. And of course, you know, there's all sorts of data and confidentiality to sort of navigate first before we can do anything in that area. But if we don't do it over the next 2 to 3 years, then we'll never do it, I suppose. All right. So we've got to get into that and maybe stop marketing to the same people we've always been marketing to in the past and get down beneath the surface. All right. So that's how I'd start doing it. So these are interim answers, Mark, probably not full answers to your questions, but there's a lot to find out here on both of them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howell. You okay with that?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I've realised it's very much work in progress. If I could just say, come back on something. I mean, you were right in expressing what you thought my opinion was, and I very much agree with you that this has to be essentially, you know, a significant amount of money needs to be invested in grassroots, because that's the real delivery mechanism. That's how you get variety and diversity into the offer. And I think that just doesn't just apply to culture, it also applies to leisure. You know, there are small providers as well. There are people that can take people, you know, on walks and other things that you know, an individual can set up their little company doing that if you give it to a larger provider, they just won't they won't have the mindset, they will spend too much money doing it, they just won't be able to get at it. So, you know, I think it's very much establishing a system where you give people the opportunity to do small projects with funding, and you measure that. And the ones that are successful, you reward by maybe giving a little bit more next time, and the ones that are not successful, you give them some guidance as to how they might improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howell.
Yes.
Councillor Leslie Dedman, please.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. I had to switch everything off again. Two questions, one of which was, I think I saw in the previous slide, Councillor, that you had, I won't be able to see it now, Mohan, but still, the restaurant at Muddyford Spit is my point, that
Okay, yes.
it was down, as we know. I mean, it used to be in my bailiwick, and now it's, I almost say luckily, moved out of it. But the attempts to zhuzh it up, which I think is what is coming out of this presentation, were very much not appreciated by the hutters. And I think certainly, I mean, over in our neck of the woods, marketing the coastline at Muddyford, it doesn't go down well. I'm sounding like the little old lady coming out with the walking stick and, you know, saying, no, we don't want it. And our residents are not at all like that. However, we are very much out on an edge. You come to Muddyford, there's nowhere else to go. You've got to turn around and or more or less move out again. And I'm very much aware that by marketing, which often means commercialisation, we have to be really, really careful. And I'm sure you will be, but I just really want to make this point that we don't get into a situation like we did with the hutters on Muddyford Spit. We did used to call them the spitters, but they didn't like that very much. So so we don't want to get into a situation over here where the commercialisation overtakes the actual pleasure of people coming here. So really, not so much a question, except that I'm sure, Mohan, this is all being taken into consideration.
Okay. Thank you. I think if I've understood you, Leslie, you'll know that the original planning application was withdrawn. I hope I'm answering the point that you're making here. The original one was withdrawn. We did that at the back end of 2020, and just what I'm keen to see now with the offices is that we're now the end of February, start of March now, aren't we? Yeah. So we need to get our skates on with this, is to put in something that's got, let me put it this way, has got kind of, you know, broader appeal with everybody, and we should be able to manage that. We can manage that and get that in, and obviously COVID and, you know, summer season notwithstanding, we can get it in there. We can land this. Okay, details to come, of course.
Yes, I think what I was saying was that really that it very much needs to be what the people in the huts want rather than this is what we're going to give them. And the same from the coastline.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dedman, and thank you, Mohan. Councillor Toby Johnson, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just take my hand down to make sure that I don't leave it up. Thank you. Councillor Anger, you've talked a lot about regenerating physical exercise and how the council is landlord to many of the local providers. But I was thinking that actually we are landlord as well to lots of grassroots clubs who rent pitches, equipment and so forth every week, and they've obviously taken a massive hit. As everybody knows, grassroots sport on all sides has taken a massive hit because of COVID, whether that be financially or just people packing in their membership, given that they haven't had the opportunities to train. You mentioned these incentives, and I know that Councillor Howell also touched on this. You mentioned the incentives. Would these incentives also be offered to those starting or restarting sports clubs, looking to take advantage of the position that we as a conurbation are in that we house at least one elite sports facility, and we have obviously AFC Bournemouth to have two non-league football clubs knocking around in Christchurch and Poole. Will we be looking to take advantage of this going forward, coming out of COVID, and looking at reinvesting into the grassroots sport and offering incentives for those restarting the clubs, which are the lifeblood of all sport?
Okay, what I'll do is I'll give a general yes to that, Toby. Okay. is it a yes but? The only but I would put after the yes is that we just need to, this is a sort of a, we've got to, it's like Festival Coast Live in a way, where we kind of just make a parallel with that, and then I'll come back to sports, is that what we're doing, and I'm very, very pleased, very proud with what we're doing with Festival Coast Live. But it's some bit of a journey into the unknown there, where we've got to think, right, how do we put proper governance around wanting to encourage maybe people we've never met before, people who've literally never contacted the council before, other than to pay their council tax annually, and to sort of maybe sort of encourage them to get engaged with us, and then we've got to have a working basis with them, and then maybe some money will change hands as part of that to encourage them along. There's a parallel with that, and I think the people you're talking about, some of whom we already know, because, for instance, whether it's cycling, or whether it's the running club, whether it's the petanque, whether it's various other clubs, some we already know. Quite a few of them we don't already know, or we used to know them and they've gone away, and maybe the club has changed hands a little bit. So we will reconnect with a lot of these people, but it's a mixed picture as to sort of how shall I put it? Frankly, some may be more worthy of supporting than others. Bluntly, I'll probably need to say that. But having said that, we want to, the point about diversity wasn't just a sort of a, put, on a whim in that previous slide, because we want to be able to be nurturing, really encouraging a sort of a real diversity of sports as well. So I've probably taken a long time to say yes to you on that, but we need to know, so such as your day job as well, Toby, that we need to just go about it carefully and make sure the detail is thought through on this one. But directionally, yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Johnson?
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Vicky Slade.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions. The first one is around, on a similar vein to Toby. I'm also on the committee of sport, Paul, but not the chair. So the transfer of sites to communities, which was something that was progressing at pace under legacy councils. I'm just wondering whether there's a plan to continue with that agenda, or whether you think that we've gone far enough. I know some of the community groups were finding it very difficult to jump over enough hoops to fulfil the needs of the council there. So I'd be interested to know what your view is on that. I'm also interested, you said something earlier on, Mohan, which really riled me, I have to be honest.
Okay.
You said you were going to announce the regime for this summer shortly. And I believe you were referring to the Resort Management Task Force, which was announced to the public about 3 weeks ago without any detail. And you've said, I'm going to announce the regime shortly. Oh, okay. It's going to start in April. And and the chair will be aware, I'm actually quite frustrated that this hasn't gone through any form of scrutiny. It's not on the cabinet agenda, and it does invest £1 million. And I'm interested to know why you haven't taken it through a democratic process which enables us to scrutinise it and challenge it, or indeed sort of really get our experience from last year in terms of what went wrong and what could be improved. And my final question is around the Air Festival, which we obviously had agreed would do this year, but pushed back by a week. I'm just interested in your thinking around the greening of the Air Festival. We were making some good moves. How much further are you going to take that in terms of transforming the Air Festival into something much broader in its appeal? Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Vicky. Okay. So on the first one then, about the transfer of sites to communities, at the risk of being unhelpful, I don't actually have a view on that, and I'm not as I need to be more up to speed with that. Yeah, I do recognise from the old pool council and the community asset transfer protocol, there were, I think, at least two examples I remember pretty clearly on that one. This one, I don't want to say something firm either way, because I need to get up to speed with what is the how does it all lie out there, and also I just want to be careful as well, because if we're talking about whether it be either giving or selling sites. I think something we need to be very, very careful about. So I'm not going to just just give any quick answer to that. Where it's merited, though, in principle, I'm not against it. Okay, and I think the spirit of where you're coming from on that is with councillors, landlords, sometimes it can be endless endless hoops people jump through to get what seems to them the simplest things done, and I'm very, very mindful of that. All right, so if there's something there which kind of makes sense and is good for people, then we won't stand in the way, but it does need care. All right, it does need care. The second one about the resort management, well, okay, now sometimes, the other week, a couple of weeks back, it was asked, a certain news agency came up and popped a microphone, are we ready or not? And of course I said what I could at that time, which wasn't very much. Literally in the last 48 hours, the details are coming together, and significant details are starting to come together about this. So I think I'll try and answer your whole question in one thing. We're now at a point very soon. When I say soon, what do I mean by that? I'm actually wondering whether actually, I know what I'm going to say, but I'm just wondering, mindful there's some officers like Graham, I think Kate, also on this call as well, whether they want to sort of add anything to my answer to this, is that we're now able to go very, very soon, within whether it's a few days or about a week or so, into a more formalised communication of this plan. So Vicky, I can't vouch for what's been said before, what's been communicated before, which is a general, we will be ready, we're learning the lessons from last time. But apart from that, there wasn't much to communicate. Now we're on the cusp of actually having some real detail to communicate to people. And frankly, that's the only communication I feel actually comfortable saying to people when we've got some real specifics in it. And specifics meaning things like resources, kind of how many, just roughly how many, kind of deployed when, kind of opening hours from when to when, and physical facilities open from when to when, yeah, and then various triggers, and there are 4 triggers in the plan which has been shown to me initially, and literally what triggers each of those 4 things, and then what happens when those things are triggered. Okay, and that is now the proper communication for this kind of thing that is coming up shortly. Happy to take any more on that. Third thing else, the Air Festival. The Air Festival is going ahead this year. We know that, yes, it's moved a little bit, separated from the bank holiday just earlier on in the week. And I know that the one little consequence of that is it overlaps with the kids going back to school, which is kind of, that gives us that little hassle there, I know. The Air Festival, the environmental black mark, of course, on the Air Festival is actually the way people come down to this resort in the first place. Whatever people feel, obviously, about military aircraft flying through the air and so on, and I do respect people. Some people find it joyous, other people find it very, very much not joyous, understood. But the best thing we can do about that is engendering a much, much more eco-friendly way for people to come down here in the first place, spend their time here, what do they do, and the way they go back home again. And of course, put like that, that applies to all our big events. So if we're going to be a resort that has more than one big event, in fact, we've got to get our heads around all of this, which is how do our people come and go? And that's the kind of question that needs to be addressed when I think of Air Festival.
Chair, am I able to come back? Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, please do.
Yeah. The 2 things I just want to come back on, Mohan. Councillor Iyengar, on the Air Festival, I'm not an Air Festival hater, never have been. I'm not a lover of it, but I recognise its benefit. But what I was really getting at was the improvements we were making in terms of offsetting and as you say, the transport issues. But we were also making some good progress on things like, should it actually be an air and sea festival? Should we be actually taking it to the Bournemouth airport? Doing more to actually get the STEM organisations involved. So not just making it about what's flying in the sky, but making it more about BCP. And I would be really sad if those progressions that we made last year were abandoned. And we had set up a cabinet working party to actually put in some of those new ideas, which obviously has not come to anything. I have no problem with the fact that there was nothing to report a couple of weeks ago or now in terms of the resort management plan. Absolutely not criticising that at all. I know what it's like when you're asked for a comment on something and you're on the spot. My point is that it isn't on the cabinet forward plan. And for me, for something that's so critical and that's something for which, you know, I'm not into revenge politics, but we went through a heck of a time last year. And I don't want that to happen this year. And I think that the way that we should go about it is to actually put it on the forward plan so that we can say, what if before the event. And when I looked at the forward plan and saw that it's not there for March or April or even May, I was like, well, how can you do something so big and not actually be prepared to put it through the democratic process? That's my point. Not there yet. So if yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
Before you come back on that, please, Mohan, I'd like to bring in the Chief Executive, Graham Front, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Chairman. Actually, I was only going to respond on that point about briefing of members to say that we were trying to set up an all-member briefing at some point between now and spring starting, so between now and Easter. But I'm sure Councillor Iyengar actually was probably about to cover that.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to proceed, Councillor Iyengar?
Okay. Actually, if I can take them in reverse order. The one about the cabinet forward plan. Okay, let's do this, Vicky. Thank you. Like noted. Let's take that one away. And obviously, I have a feeling you're not going to let that one drop. So let's take that away and see. You know, it won't be my decision alone, but let's just see where we go with that one. I think if I can take, the spirit of that, meaning just literally there's proper governance around it, there's formal decision making, and that literally, all councillors are aware of it. If that's the substance of it, then we will make sure that happens. Okay. The previous one about the Airfest and because there was, forgive me, I'll forget the name of the group that was set up to look at the festival last year. I believe you chaired it, or a colleague chaired it. Is that can I suggest the ideas from that, the thinking from that won't be lost? All right. We'll continue it this year, and I suppose maybe this year we'll sort of have a similarish format to what it had 2 years previously. But I wouldn't say this unless I meant it. I'd like to see the festival evolve in a way where obviously we want to keep the economic benefit of it, because it does have an importance, at least for a while, for a good while longer. It does have an economic importance for our area, but A, because of the environmental thing we've got to do with it, with people coming in and out, and secondly, and I think this is what you were getting at, is that how can will I get shot down for this? Almost like bringing it forward with some more progressive sort of progressive thinking, and maybe more of a spread, and making it more where sort of more people can engage in it, and you've talked about the marine side as well in that, so it's literally air and marine as well. And how can we do that? I'm absolutely up for that, and as long as we've got an event which kind of still works, and it's not become too sprawled out, then I'm absolutely up for infusing all those ideas in it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Borthwick, and thank you for your patience in waiting for your turn to speak.
Chair, thank you very much. Mohan, how can you talk about health, mental health, good living, when someone in the council is stopping people playing golf when they're over 80 years of age? And we've got people of 89 years of age who play regularly and do not get the same facilities as those people who do not use disabled golf equipment. The golfer up at Queen's Park, average golfer, couldn't carry his clubs, and you wouldn't get so many members. You'd lose a load of members if they couldn't carry their clubs. Why is the disabled golfer being victimised for something which has been going on for years? And if you speak to anybody in the council, nothing happens. I've written emails to people, no reply. And I could give you a list of names. I've even heard one councillor being told, don't get involved in this. So I don't know where all this is coming from, but I really am disgusted the way you are dealing, the council are dealing with people over 80 years of age, and including some lady golfers as well who are not that age, but they could not play if they couldn't use their disabled single-seater buggy, which is a designated and specially made trolley to be the safest in Europe. And we're stopped playing time and time, and we pay the same money to play, and if we don't play, you don't get no refund. So if somebody says it's rained today, you can't play today, but we'll let those other 50 golfers go out in front of you. I'd like an answer, please.
Before you answer that, Councillor, I mean, this is a very, Derek, if you don't mind me saying, this is a very specific inquiry, and it's not necessarily related to the presentation we've got, but you've asked a question.
Yeah, but I've been trying for 2 years.
Yeah,
this is not a fly in the ointment, and I've written letters in the last 3 months, time and time again, and I don't even get an answer.
Okay, well, let Councillor Iyengar answer the question. We are about to approach the time when we're asking specific questions, for example, the ones that Jackie Edwards has, because I think we're coming to the end of this question session on the presentation itself. But if Councillor Iyengar would like to give you a response, it might be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, this one, you're quite right, Derek. You have lobbied me on it. It's not resolved. It needs resolution. It's on my list. I'm not going to hide on this one. We've not resolved it, and I acknowledge your point and thank you for making it again. We'll keep pushing it forward. We'll try and get a resolution. And I realise you're being at a disadvantage.
It seems to me the officers are dictating to the councillors, and as councillors, we're in charge of the advertisement we put out there. BCP, it's the Conservatives. It's not the officers what get talked about in the press, it's the actual councillors. And they're being dictated to by somebody at Queen's Park Golf Club. Golf, not club. Don't call it club, sorry, just Queen's Park Golf.
Thank you, Derek. Councillor Iyengar. Okay, well, Councillor Iyengar has agreed to take that on board, and if you could, thank you very much.
I must say I'm annoyed.
Thank you.
I'm annoyed to have to place it in the public domain. I really am annoyed. I thought it could have been dealt properly by the council officers.
All right, Derek. Thank you very much. Right then, if you don't mind, members, I've got a question. I don't get a chance to ask questions very often. One of the areas in Bournemouth next to the pavilion, there were plans to develop the area on the Bath Road North car park into a cultural / leisure type facility with an underground car park. And there was some very, very smart modelling done by a very famous architect on this. I remember seeing the presentation, and that's a very key site within the town. But I didn't see any mention of it in the presentation. I just wondered, is it on the radar still, or is it something else to come in the future? Any news on that?
Can you? Well, on the whole, I need to ask a question if you don't mind, Chair. Just literally the whole thing about the BIC was just one sub bullet in there, which really doesn't do it justice whatsoever, because it's a very big discussion. Chair, can I ask, please, can you just tell me which particular site are you thinking of? Can you just?
Yeah, it's actually, if you're looking south, it's directly to the left of the pavilion, where the Bath Road North car park actually is.
Yeah.
Big area. And I mean, there were discussions about having an open air entertainment area, maybe an extension to the Russell Coates Museum offering all sorts of things. A big underground car park, a big sort of walkways, a big leisure cultural type facility. It's all gone rather quiet on it.
I tell you what, it has, and look, that's not been in discussion. Well, when I say recently, not within the last few months, unless any officer on here wants to correct me on that. But I know that what some sort of a lot of thinking is literally from the BIC, sort of just up the hill there, up towards through the gardens to the Westover Road, and then back down to the Royal Bath, and then back down again. And just a lot of interest about what we can do for almost that. You can almost imagine a parade going. That's a nice loop all the way round there. But sorry, I don't want to carry on being vague with my answer. Just I need to take that away, please, Chairman, and just give you an answer to that.
That's fine. Yeah, I'd be interested to get an answer to it. And Councillor Andy Hadley and George Farquhar want. I'll take a couple of questions now from members that are not on the board. So, George, and this is relative, I hope, to the presentation that's just been made, Councillor Farquhar. So, if you'd like to go ahead, thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask a question of the portfolio order. And kudos on a very well put together presentation and well delivered, Councillor Iyengar. I've got two questions. The first one relates to something which came up from your presentation, and I can understand you're not at liberty to sort of discuss the seafront plan, but I've had two residents in as many weeks approach me for toilet facilities in open spaces, and I found it very interested in your presentation that we're looking to expand out into these open spaces rather than just the leisure centres focus in itself. My first question is, do you view public toilets in open spaces, recreational areas, as falling within your portfolio? And two, what sort of view do you have to support the wider sort of cultural aspect so that people can practice their, I think you said it, we've dropped down 2 notches on our fitness, can practice their fitness in their own particular way, and helping to facilitate that, particularly for perhaps the older generation that needs access to public amenities where they don't exist at the moment. And in this particular case, I'm talking about Kings Park and Boscombe Overcliff Gardens.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mohan. Thank you.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. Are they in my portfolio? Well, okay. From the seafront, yes, they are. And actually, as soon as you come inland, actually, no, it's Councillor Anderson's the toilets. But the answer to both, and just hope Councillor Anderson isn't there wincing in the background, is that yes, the thinking is aligned, because we are. We do need to encourage activity, cultural expression, exercising, within reason on all of our public spaces, because some people have got the joy of being very close to the beach, others have got a smaller space nearer to them. We need people have got to be able to exercise in all of them. Now, the nub of your question is about the toilets, and put it this way, it should not be a hindrance, the fact that people don't have that facility nearby, because it means either they can't go out at all or they can't go out for very long. I accept that's one of the challenges we're going to have to face with this, and toilets are not cheap. Whether it's kind of portable or whether it's a fixed installation, they're not cheap at all. We're going to have to face this problem square on. Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask another question, just also related to the presentation, because it was a good presentation and it sort of gets my juices flowing. What's the portfolio holder's view on particularly we're working with franchises, etc., on the seafront, to actually laying down an edict whereby what's the portfolio's view on actually outlawing, for want of a better term, or encouraging they stop using single-use plastics on the seafront for these outlets. So we're talking about beer mugs, we're talking about the plastic beer mugs, we're talking about plastic boxes, refreshment containers, and so on and so forth. And also going on from that, and we perhaps talked about it in the ideas for the seafront and the festival, etc., in branding perhaps BCP refuge bags, such as the paper bags, so that people actually are encouraged to take their rubbish away, or some sort of incentivizer to package up the rubbish which they take. So 2 parts to that question: one, encouraging people to remove the litter from the beach. The other one, how do we cut out single-use plastics? What's within our remit as a council to sort of lay an edict down to say we encourage you not to provision up your refreshments in single-use plastics?
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. On both of those, I mean, partly is a single answer for both of them. I actually think we need to be very careful with this one. And I don't want my answer being inferred as anything like I don't take our environmental responsibility seriously. Now, I suppose the challenge will we demonstrate that by issuing edicts or issuing instructions to people where we can. Well, then these things always have knock-ons, don't they? All right. And sometimes maybe it's about the timing, when to do it. It's sometimes the way we do it as well. Single-use plastics. Now, I mean, sad to say, I've sadly bought a lot of things with single-use plastics of late, because of course you can't get something in a glass or on a proper plate, can you now? And I'd really rather not reveal how much packaging was around a burger I bought recently just on Pool Quay, and I actually asked her to remove some of the packaging from it, please, because I just really did not need it at all, and it was only going to go into a bin literally in about half a minute's time. But at the moment, we can't defy what the government rules are around all of this. Now, they don't say you've got to use single-use packaging, but what they're saying is what people can't do is use crockery, yeah, use metal and use glass, yeah, for this stuff. So for a while longer, we are resigned to having this kind of stuff, right? And let me put all of them in one definition for the moment. I do understand cardboard is different to plastic, of course. Second thing in all of this is that what is our kind of like our right, or what's our sort of deal with people along the seafront, businesses trying to make a living on this? We could manoeuvre our way towards doing that. And I know enough of the businesses up and down the seafront now, and I'm getting to know a larger number of them who are progressive with this. And in fact, this is the best outcome. Actually, they're the ones suggesting what they could do, and that's the way we want to do it. Because when they come up with the ideas and they say what's good for them and we can do it like this, and actually it's good for us, and frankly it becomes something for their branding, it's something part of their reputation, then as soon as they can come forward with doing this, we want to be right behind them. And if we're supporting them, I don't want to say monetarily, but if we're supporting them in spirit and we're saying how can we be helping them share the learning, for instance, yeah, helping them share good practice with others, and that's how we can encourage it along. That's how I'd like to do it. I've got I'll be frank on this. I've got a real aversion to just coming down heavy-handed in this area on our businesses at any time, and especially at this time now. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Andy Hadley, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mohan. That's a very good presentation, and particularly pleased with the answer on the toilets, given the problems we had in recent years over those in open spaces. Two things from me, I guess. One was around beta, and you mentioned beta specifically in terms of outdoor exercise. And sadly, as part of trying to refurbish the sports equipment in Whitecliff and Poole Park, we've lost facilities in beta. So really keen if we can find a way to find some money to actually restore something on beta, that would be really nice. Don't want to make it too parochial or on the spot for you, but that's a hole that's appeared suddenly without notice. We had a day's notice they were going to be demolished. But the other one was around the Air Festival, and I sit in a probably different place to Vicky, but I'm recognising the value of it. I'm also very conscious that a number of festivals have been cancelled this year, including the Great Dorset Steam Fair, and that's about crowding people together. One of the ideas we had in terms of trying to broaden the appeal and make it a greener festival was trying to celebrate some of the other things around aviation in the area. So things like the flying boats in Poole, the fact that Rolls was killed in Southbourne in an air show in I think 1912 or whatever it was. The industries up at the airport, including some really innovative ones that are looking at electric flights and how we move beyond the current methods. So it was really how physically we can spread things out, and whether that's part of the response we should be trying to build into the airshow this year, so that we're not crowding everybody on the beach in the same square mile in order to share their COVID with each other. So it was just whether you've got any thinking about what we can do both for the longer term, but also in terms of perhaps spreading the load this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you answer that one, Councillor Iyengar, I shan't take any more speakers or questions against this section of the presentation. So after you've answered this one, if we could then move on to the questions submitted earlier by Councillor Edwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. And for these, you know, I know the flying boats, Pool Flying Boat celebration very well, it's a great story, and I'm ex-British Airways, so there's almost a connection back to the old BOAC there as well, and just one or two of them are all ex-BA captains as well, or well, whatever, a good while ago, and also the Charles Rolls Heritage Trust were in touch with me recently as well, and I've still got to buy their book, by the way, the latest book they've published. The one about broadening it out, at the risk of kind of just repeating an earlier answer, is that I think the best thing, Andy, from what yourself and I think what Vicky was saying earlier, is that the best ideas that have been generated, I think, by the group that you were on, that happened last year, and that will emerge, you know, from the experience that we've had. I think rather than sorry, you can say, I'm just trying to think of, you know, what's the right way of sort of phrasing this, is that I don't want to say completely the die is cast for this year's Ayres Festival, because that's not, you know, that's not actually quite true. But I think what I don't want to do is, given that it's going to be sort of, you know, we're going to have to do this year's event with a lot of care in terms of contractual commitments and so on and so forth. All right, is that I've just got to think carefully whether also this year is the year we also sort of, you know, throw up the format and shake it up completely this year, or whether we just go with something which is actually, this is familiar, this is what's known, and all the various providers of the Ayres Festival, they know it as well. So with all the other unknowns, something here is actually quite known and we can deliver it. And we're also, of course, giving that certainty to all the people who come and visit as well, and all our hospitality sector. And whether we go with that kind of thinking this year, all right, assuming, of course, we still go ahead, COVID permitting, of course, all right, but definitely at the moment the intention is we will. And whether or not the ideas that I think you've been saying and one or two others have been saying, is we give ourselves the time to think, how do we then in future years shape it into a more sort of, I'd call it maybe a broader and maybe a sort of a more sort of modern looking event. So, you know, I am kind of, you know, with you directionally on this, but I think to try and shoehorn something to this year is just more of a challenge given everything else we've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Iyengar, we could go on to the questions that you've had from
yes,
Councillor Edwards, and she's got quite a few there, I think.
Actually written them on the slides, Chairman. Is that helpful to us?
Yeah,
and I've got written answers. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So on the first one, question one, thank you, Jackie, with these. Disabled access to the beach has been hampered ever since East Cliff Lift was damaged in the 16 landslide. Okay, will the land train be running again on the cliff top, allowing those with disabilities and others an easier route to the beach? Okay, current thinking on this is that we will be running the land train. You can see the end point on there, sort of keep it under review, but current intention is during the summer holiday period when the numbers are busiest, and numbers it should say. Experience of recent years and even before the cliff issue is that the passenger numbers were low, and partly because, of course, the yellow bus runs, which offers a more comfortable ride for people. But that's one where we will keep watching it, because it's something which can sort of, you know, not with the drop of a hat, but it can be changed. Okay. Shall I go on to the next one, Chair?
Yes, please do. Yes.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
carry on.
I'll just carry on. Yeah. Fine.
Okay.
Okay, so Dorset Council may withdraw funding and possibly not reopen. This is according to the questioner, I should add here. Dorset Council may withdraw funding and possibly not reopen their tourist information centres. Are our ticks, are they safe and open when current restrictions end? Yes, currently, yeah, we've got 3 of them on the Bournemouth Seafront, within Pool Museum at the Regent Centre, Christchurch, and unless anything changes, they're due to open 12th of April. Okay, and there's no intentions to do anything else at the moment with those. I think, mind you, I must say, you know, with the TICs, it's something where, you know, going forward, let's think of those in the overall mix, but I'm not flagging anything now. The intention is to keep them. Okay, good. Does the tourism department have sufficient resources for marketing the whole area, that we're open and safe? Destination marketing needs to show that we're not just a beach, but we have many other attractions while being a good base to explore the whole area for staying visitors. Okay, it's tourism that makes the area vibrant and attractive for businesses and people to live and work in and along with those studying and or visiting for a holiday or a short break. etc. Once foreign holidays are readily available, will we have resources in place to attract visitors to boost the local economy, not just for this year, but for years to come? Okay, we may not have quite the number of people that we had before, but do we have enough? Yes, we do, absolutely. Last month, okay, members, I won't read the whole thing, but we've had some accolades recently, including that wonderful one from TripAdvisor, 20th best in the world. Just for amusement, by the way, I actually contacted my counterpart in San Diego City Council actually to see what she thought about it. And I got a report, a response, but a nice response back from one of her staff, and apparently I'm going to get an email very shortly because I floated the idea of a joint press release with her to do some bridge building with San Diego on this. But we're doing a lot. A Beyond the Beach campaign will highlight cultural experiences and expanded events offer, and marketing will be definitely to encourage, and I hope this is music to your ears, Jackie, to encourage more stay visitors, to increase the revenue without necessarily increasing the total numbers, if you're with me. Okay, this is what comes in when I was talking earlier on about our seafront projects and actually having one thread or one narrative through them all, so that we've got a stronger definition of what is our resort and what is our brand, which is good, and it could be even better. Okay, the second bullet point on there, the council's big plan and the new strategy from the sector-led DMB, Destination Management Board, lays out the ambition. And as I've said, okay, it's to join the thinking up with previous strategies and to integrate it into the compact. Okay, so a bit of management speak there, I will admit, but just hopefully that covers it. These questions, okay, we're lucky to have so many libraries in the BCP area. Some are to become community hubs. Are the other ones safe? My view from the heart, libraries have a special role in the community, both historically and forward-looking. No intentions to close any. Some are being repurposed, absolutely, as community hubs. And you know my view, which is in some cases that's good, it reinforces their role. And that's a project which is underway now and running on time. Others will be considered for how their value in the community can be made even stronger by increasing and by modernising their services. And those of you, I know many councillors from, who have had conversations on libraries in the past, very, very passionate about libraries, but equally passionate about how we can learn great councils elsewhere in the country, and including some of the things not to do, and how we can modernise it and really sort of make it, a lot more progressive. Okay, but they're doing a lot of good things already. Number 5. What sort of plans does the council envisage for the future Bournemouth piers? There's a story of 2 piers here. Bournemouth pier was strengthened in 2007, so that's good for a while, to say the least. But with Bournemouth pier, we do have something on the to-do list here, subject to the findings of a structural survey, which is underway. This is, depending on what they say, but we estimate around 20 more years of useful life before the replacement is required. So I don't want to hint yet, and it'd be improper for me to hint as to which way any decision will go on that, but obviously it will be a big decision and weigh up sort of tangibles and intangibles about, sort of what it means to the town as well. And number 6, the Pinewood display area. For those of you who may not know it, literally Westover Road as you go down into the gardens, and some of you may know the sort of aviaries there. I used to take the girls there quite a lot. Is a hidden gem, but apparently became too costly for those people exhibiting their art and crafts, so many people stopped coming. How can we make it more attractive and affordable, thus ensuring it's full of interesting exhibits? And with the aviary, it should be a go-to place. A very upbeat story, or I hope you feel so, Jackie and other members. It's been popular with the past. There's absolute recognition that it needs regeneration. Rents were reduced. I'll grant that they were going up before then. They have been reduced and some pitches sort of given selectively free. But I think the more important story here is going forward is, again, Cultural Compact, of course, is thinking for local art, fashion, food and crafts. I think it'd be a wonderful spot for that, and I've had feedback to that extent. Appealing to a younger generation, I hope that means all generations, of course, and ensuring a changing offer to bring people back each week, so something that stays fresh. We're developing plans to replace the old exhibition stands with art huts, and I've seen a photo. Sorry, I've not included it in here, but very happy to send that to whoever wants it. But it's just an illustrative photo. It'll look better and be used more often, and importantly, it will help, by keeping the place busy, ASB issues that we're having in that area. It's got planning approval, and we're now exploring the funding options and late spring, and there's the funding on it. Okay, and the final question, this was from Councillor George Farquhar. I've printed that. I won't read, with your permission, Chair. I won't read the whole question, but Councillor Farquhar's challenge was about the funding for the charity Vita Nova, which is a charity, and I'll try and get my words accurate here, a charity helping those who've suffered with drugs and alcohol related issues. And I'll come straight to my answer on this one from the officers. The value of Vita Nova as a charity, as an organisation, is acknowledged as a smaller service delivering to individuals in recovery and enabling them to receive ongoing support and to stay clean of DNA. Vita Nova received funding some years ago from Bournemouth Borough Council to support drama education in local schools. If I can explain a bit, part of the sort of the restorative process and so on is the encouragement of art, hence the drama education. Since 2013, the government has taken away this funding from the control of the council's own DACT team, that's the Drugs and Alcohol Commissioning team, and sent it directly to schools. So 7 years ago that happened. And then, of course, in the hands of the schools and with other pressures they've got, some of it obviously may have been invested elsewhere. From the current DACT allocation that the council does have, BCP Council funds and supports aftercare provision through the R-Hub in Boscombe. This, you ought to know separately, is due to come up for tender for a single provision across BCP sites. VN can apply for this, but it will need to satisfy the government's set requirements. And I think this final bit, George, if I may, is kind of maybe at the nub of your challenge, is that funding for DNA treatment, according to government requirements, so not at council discretion, is for specific interventions and for people who are, shall we say, at an earlier stage, who are actively in their addiction or early in their recovery within a year of accessing treatment, whereas what Vita Nova does is actually later on in the cycle. It's primarily for people who are well into their recovery. BCP Council therefore cannot, under these guidelines, reimburse the rent for an organisation providing a service that is later in the cycle and therefore which lies outside the National Drug Treatment Monitoring System. Just regrettably, but they are the guidelines I've been told very firmly by the officers.
Thank you, Ianga. I think I'm going to draw this to a close now. I'm absolutely delighted to hear that the exhibition stands in the Pine Walk are going to be replaced. They're exceedingly scruffy. The canvas on them, it looks absolutely dreadful. Yeah, so I really look forward to that being sorted out. Well, what can I say? I mean, that was such a comprehensive overview of the tourism issues. Thank you very, very much for all the hard work that you've put into preparing the presentation. And I'm sure it's given a great deal of food for thought for a number of members. So thank you very much, Councillor Ianga.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to agenda item 6 now, please. The future regeneration in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. I believe that I think this is being presented by Councillor Broadhead. Is that right? Thank you. Would you like to introduce your paper then? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and welcome members. It's still Monday. It feels like a Friday already, doesn't it? But I'll try not to be too long in my introduction. This is a joint paper put forward by the leader and myself, but of course the title makes very clear, predominantly regarding around regeneration, and the title is quite a lofty one, the future of regeneration in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, but that's because it's as it says in there, this is primarily looking to address how we can actually deliver on some of the ambition, scale and pace that we've just put forward in our big plan. I think it's summed up pretty well actually in the reasons for recommendation here, which says it's to enable greater focus and corporate grip on realising opportunities for delivering homes and jobs on sites owned and controlled by the council, and increasing that scale and pace and delivery. As we all know, because we've just passed the big plan, we've got a tremendous regeneration agenda and ambition within the area, close to £1 billion of GDV on the council's owned sites alone. So a tremendous opportunity for us to use that to regenerate our area, to kickstart our economy, and really transform some of the more scruffy parts of the area as well. We're also quite fortuitously at a bit of a crossroad in a number of areas. So a number of these key sites have had a lot of work done on them in the past. They're at key points of that kind of strategic decision making. At the same time, we've also just our director of regeneration has moved on elsewhere. So we've got an opportunity there to think about how we corporately deal with the subject of regeneration. And of course, as a new administration, we've clearly put that at the very front and centre of what we do. So what this paper does is it sets out the agenda of what we're looking to try and do, and in particular to bring in some outside consultants to say, if we really want to focus on that delivery of regeneration now, how should we do that? Now, as it sets out in the paper, there's a number of different existing mechanisms that we've already got, and we're doing some work around them as well. We've got the Bournemouth Development Company that has a number of sites within the Bournemouth area under their option agreement. We've also got Seascapes Homes and Property Limited, which is a wholly owned company by the council, which has already underdone a lot of property acquisition, primarily around the homelessness agenda. But of course, as it does say in the paper, the ambition that we've got now is such that we are operating at a very, very different scale to what we have done before. And to be brutally honest, we've got two choices. We've just within our budget put an extra 500% increase in the regeneration budget. And moving forward, do we continue to do what we've often done in the past and do a lot of this stuff in house, so essentially have council officers leading on some major projects, or do we actually do what the outside world would do and get the experts in and get some skills and experience which probably don't exist within the council, and to use that to help us to drive these the developments forward? One of the ways of doing that, which I think is one of the things which is really exciting, is to set up an urban regeneration company which is wholly owned by the council that can do precisely that, take all of that skills and experience that's out there in the outside world, and use that to help us drive some of these projects forward. And you know, as members will have heard me say, delivery is absolutely everything. There's no point in getting to the stage where you have lots of pretty plans about what you want to do, and then fail at that final point, which is getting spades in the ground, getting cranes in the sky, and starting to deliver for the people of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. So we've already appointed some consultants to start us on that work, but really, as with a number of other papers we've had recently, this is the beginning of trying to do something really important. And the recommendations are to authorise the chief executive in consultation with both the leader and I to procure and review the advice from that external consultants, and then really try to get to grips with how we do this. We're not being prescriptive at this stage because it's a bit silly to say that we need the advice of experts and then try and tell them what that should be. But we are hoping to do this at pace because we're at a critical point with a number of these projects, and I, for one, don't want to get to the point where we've got some really, really amazing plans and then fail to deliver them. So this is very much a paper about delivery, but happy to take any questions at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Members. Councillor Howell.
Thank you. Yeah, very short presentation, relatively short paper. I agree that the way forward is to look at the appropriate model that we should be using to deliver regeneration, and that's something that we started off when we were still the administration. But I mean, there's several difficult things that need to be addressed during that process. One is the fact that we have an existing agreement with BDC where they have rights over, most of the car parks that are still remaining within Bournemouth. So I'd be interested in trying to understand, how the portfolio holder envisages getting around that issue if it were to be determined that BDC weren't the appropriate partner. I'm also concerned that the report doesn't really say what set a path to regeneration, particularly in Poole, as to how plans are going to be developed. We heard from the portfolio holder at council that they seem not to be progressing the idea of moving the bus depot, which has been a long-stated objective of the council. But we're not hearing of any plans as to what they that they do want to do. We haven't heard anything from the lead member for Pool Regeneration since his appointment. You know, the member panel that I established isn't operating on anymore, and I understand the administration don't want to continue. So how are we as members outside the administration going to be involved in the plans that are developed? And just to finish off, the final point is that there was a master plan commissioning exercise for Pool, which was ready to go. Essentially, it was just waiting to see the results of a transformation commission, and we deliberately didn't set it off because we wanted to make sure that, you know, we wouldn't be incurring money and spending that was unnecessary. But very much so in Pool that there needs to be a broader plan, and it seems from the paper that the paper is only looking at the sites that we own and not that broader plan of how we bring everything together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Howell, for your questions. I'll try and deal with them in turn. The first point is regarding the Bournemouth Development Company, and if you look at the report, it's referred to in part number 7, which refers to the fact that we're with local partnerships undertaking an assessment for value for money and all of the successes around Bournemouth Development Company. Now, I don't want to obviously comment on the outcome of that before it's even begun, but that is something that is in train, just really to assess. I mean, we've just had the 10th anniversary of the Bournemouth Development Company, and it's clearly got a number of successes under its belt, but it feels like now is the right time to be looking at that and seeing if we do carry it on, what we would, how we want to change that relationship, if we do want to make any amendments going forward. Needless to say, as the councillor will be aware, we've had some changes in the joint partner that we've got with that as well in Morgan Sindall. The partner was Morgan Sindall Investments. We've now got Muse as the partner, which actually operate at a very different scale than the Morgan Sindall investment side has, which actually may well be to our benefit. A couple of the very major schemes that we've got within the Bournemouth Development Company portfolio, such as the Winter Gardens, where we're just ironing out the final viability issues, and Cotlands, which is a really important scheme for the centre of the Bournemouth kind of business central district. It might well be that new partner that we have there, which is part of the same umbrella group, is a better partner than previously. So we've obviously had our initial meetings with them. I am feeling quite optimistic actually about some of the future working that we've got with them, and as you pointed out, we have an option agreement with them on a number of the Bournemouth sites. So I mean, that forms part of the basis of this work, clearly. Actually, the quantum, however, is the sites which are outside of the Bournemouth Development Company agreement. And as I mentioned at the beginning, trying to assure that we've got the viability at the heart of all of those schemes. You mentioned as part of your second point an example of the bus depot and other parts of Pool Regeneration. And the reason we're doing this is precisely because of the point you made. It felt when I inherited the portfolio that we're falling into the same trap that we've done in a number of areas before, which is going into these not as experts, and even the council officers, fantastic team, but they are not experts in major development projects, and then kind of arbitrarily deciding what we would like to see, drawing up pretty advanced plans, and then when we come to the delivery stage, realizing that they just weren't viable and we could never progress them. That's not how you do things in the private sector. In the private sector, as part of that initial process, you don't draw a master plan and then think about how you deliver it at the end. It's a lot of that viability and deliverability is baked into the system at the very front. Now, we've clearly got some massive opportunities in Pool, and there's a reason that Pool Regeneration is one of the 5 key areas that we brought out in the big plan, because it's a huge political priority for this administration. My view is that the very worst thing that we could do as a new administration is go and spend 6-8 months deciding exactly what we thought we should do with lots of these sites in Pool, and then think about delivery and realise they were not deliverable. We've got a unique opportunity here to bring in some expert outside expertise and skills with this new a vast amount of extra investment we're putting into this area, and let the experts guide us on this, because I'm absolutely convinced with some of these areas that there are some really quick wins that can be unlocked. We had the previous pool administration had the Heart of Pool scheme that was developed. I know that you weren't a huge fan of that, and clearly it had its flaws, but there are some bits in there that may well be deliverable very, very quick. But I think the very worst thing we could do is start to spend a lot of time and effort on something which basically didn't have the plan for how to deliver at its very core. Now, that's not to say we're kicking it down the can. Actually, the whole point of this is to unlock some of these sites and unlock them extremely quickly, because if we can get the experts in there to do that analysis, then I really think that we can start to get action very, very quickly. The final point you make around the broader plan and just having the council-owned sites within there is actually, I completely agree with you. And it would be a failure if we just took all of the parts that we've got in isolation from the bigger picture. And one of the first things that we've got the consultants that we've instructed to do at the moment is to look at a lot of the sites that we are either close to or are out there with market failure, because bearing in mind we've got our £50 million futures fund, and see whether within any mechanisms that we might set up, such as an urban regeneration company, we might use that to address the broader strategic issues around regeneration as well. And Councillor Howell will be aware, obviously, we now own the power station site in Poole, which is one of the largest regeneration sites on the south coast. There are a number of adjacent sites to that which quite clearly fit in the broader plan of what we should be doing in this part of Poole, and we are working with the neighbouring sites at the moment through this mechanism to see whether we can address that all together. So a bit of a long-winded reply, but I think just a flavour of some of the work that's going on behind the scenes. Finally, with member engagement, we are at a bit of a kind of a change point here. So we've reached a point with a number of these schemes where, precisely because this is coming, the worst thing we can do is to carry on too much work. But I envision, certainly within the next, if we do go forward with this new delivery model, that will be the time to really kickstart the member engagement as that part of that process as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Howard?
Yes, please. I'd just like to kind of correct the record a bit there. I'm a bit worried that the portfolio holders talking about going back to some of the elements of the borough pool scheme, because that was not viable. It was not financially viable because it was treated as piecemeal development, and the reality is, in that part of Poole, you're not going to be able to sell flats for the amount that you need to sell them for unless you radically change the wider environment to make it an attractive place to live in. And that is the lack of vision and the lack of broader thinking which we were trying to change. And the Borough of Poole spent over £400,000 in putting that together. What we did when we took over the administration is we decided to go back to the basics and try and sort out with our transport partners to try and get some agreement as to whether it was viable to, or a sensible thing indeed, to move the station, whether it is sensible to have the bus station and the station together, and that was a good piece of work, and it only cost £20,000, which is relatively cheap in these terms. And the conclusion that we got was essentially that people weren't really up for moving the station, the train station, but they thought that trying to put the bus station and the station together would be an objective that was desirable. So the second point that I'd like to make is I'm a bit worried about the talk of the company that, establishing a wholly owned company, because we have a number of those in the council already. And what they suffer from is that there's no dividing line between the company and the council. The people working for the company are council officers. They have other responsibilities, and therefore everything gets mixed together. I'm talking about Seascape at the moment. So if you have a wholly owned company, you've got to find a way of making sure that the officers that are working on it full time, and that's their job, and they're not getting pulled into with other responsibilities. I totally agree that we need particularly a senior person that's been there and done that, to come in and help us move regeneration forward. But that person, whether he sits in the council or in another company, needs to be empowered to do their job. And it's good that money is coming forward for that. But the structure, the power structure, has also to empower that person to do their job. Thank you.
I think you were just making some points there. If you wouldn't mind, Councillor Broadhead, I'd like to bring in a couple of the other members, if that's all right. But yeah, some good points there. Thank you, Mark. Councillor Lewis. Oh, sorry, Councillor Derek Borthwick, your hand is still up. I'm not sure historic one.
No, it's new.
Oh, it's new? Okay.
No question. Yes. Are we replacing the officer who's leaving us? Are we replacing him? Are the new joint company supplying the experts, or are we supplying the experts and then paying for them? And what's the percentage of the share of the profits in the deals we're doing with them? We getting 50% each? All right, Phil, you can stop smiling. Okay, Phil, over to you.
It's a nice, easy question. I'm not
Sorry, Chair, I won't forget.
That's quite all right, Councillor Borthwick. I'm not sure that we could go into profit margins because that could well be confidential. And but I'm sure that Councillor Broadhead has got a couple of answers regarding officers and employment of officers in company, etc.
He's in the know.
Thank you very much, Chair. The answer is I don't know the answer to all of those questions. Clearly, we've got an opportunity, having had a change in that senior directorship, to exactly as I said at the beginning, look at how you might well do it differently. And actually, if you were going to set up an outside company, an urban regeneration company that was wholly owned by the council, then that would be a natural place, if you were going to replace that role, to have it to take the strategic lead for regeneration going forward. Now, clearly, that's not the be-all and end-all. There's other strategic aspirations within the council as well. So there's a number of conversations to have there. But of course, what we're talking about here is some of the major sites that we've got and how to get them off the ground. Councillor Borthwick's kind of second point relates a little bit to Councillor Howell's point earlier on regarding the difference between the council and outside companies. And if you're not careful, if you set up an outside company that is just a wing of the council, then you're quite right. You do get into a position whereby you're just kind of employing a council officer, but in a different place. That's not really, I think, where the direction of travel here is. And again, there's more work to do here. But the whole point of this is that when you've got massive sites with, hundreds of millions of pounds of GDV at some point, you will need experts with outside experience and skill sets in driving forward major projects to drive forward those projects. And I think what we'll probably end up with is something that has a degree of flexibility within it. So on the one hand, you've got a senior team of very experienced people that know exactly what they're doing and are able to drive these projects forward. But at the same time, the agility that underneath that, it's very likely that we'll have to have joint ventures with a number of these schemes. So that will be possible within the mechanism. It might well be that we do direct delivery on some of these schemes. It might well be that we think of other ways. But fundamentally, we need to figure out where we're going to put this investment in regeneration. Do we put it within the council and have a bit more of a siloed project made approach? Or do we actually put it somewhere where we can get the right skills in? And I think that's the drive behind it. Obviously, this is a paper which is seeking permission to go ahead and do that piece of work, so I wouldn't want to signal where the end outcome will be at this stage, but you get an idea of the aspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. I hope members wouldn't mind if I just came in with a question at this point. I know Lewis Allison is waiting in the wings there. Just a clarification on the recommendation, Councillor Broadhead, is it the intention that once you've got the consultancy advice that you'll be bringing back your proposals for organisations and structures, etc., to Cabinet at some point? Or is it that you will go ahead, implement them and then bring the various projects back to the Cabinet you know, sort of independently, because I you know, there are a number of vehicles that you're talking about in terms of delivery. And there could be lots, there could be one, you know. Is it your intention to bring back the results of the consultation to Cabinet?
I think the second point with regard to the sites, I'll answer first. Anything that transfers any kind of, does anything with any major sites invariably forms the basis for a key decision. So automatically have to go to council. And I don't think we're talking about doing anything with the council property at this stage. This is more about an outside structure that can bring in the skills and experience and advice to bring forward these schemes that we're talking about. As to the first question, which is that will the outcome of this work necessitate further cabinet papers? The answer is, again, I don't know. A lot of that will depend on what the outcome of this piece of work actually recommends. It may well be that we are able to get some of these structures, if it's just a case of setting up a team immediately, up and running very quickly. It might well be that we want to go tremendously further and it needs a lot more piece of work. I think certainly the thrust from the senior team and the leader and I at the moment in moving forward this is that we want things to happen very quickly. We are at the stage where, as I mentioned earlier on, to take the power station site, the Bournemouth International Centre site, the Wessex Field site, the Towns Fund deal, a lot of these are at the stage where a tremendous amount of work around the visioning has already been done, and they're just strategically at the point where they're about to enter delivery phase. That's the point where you need to get the experts in quickly to try and take it to the next level. And so we do want this piece of work to conclude quickly. Whether that will necessitate having to come back to council again or cabinet, I don't know, but certainly the intention is to try and get this delivery mechanism up running and running as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead, but it doesn't really answer my question. I mean, because potentially you could go from just one partner to many partner. You could just be giving it to one organisation, say, right, this is what we want, now get on and do it for us. But you will have taken that decision without presenting that decision to the cabinet. And I think, you know, potentially it's a massive decision to be taking, and probably a massive decision just for maybe the three, you know, yourself and the chief executive alone, and maybe one other, I think you're suggesting in here. So that's my concern.
Yeah, if I could, Chair, I mean, it may well be worth bringing the chief exec in at this point, who can maybe advise a little bit more on the structures that we would have to follow. But as I kind of intimated at the beginning, I don't think this gives us delegated authority to go off and do loads of joint ventures or, you know, completely resolve the world of all of the regeneration. As much as anything else, this is about looking, first of all, to procure the advice, and secondly, to come up with a structure at the very least that can serve as an umbrella to resolve a lot of these issues. But the chief exec may wish to add further.
Yeah, thank you, chief exec.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that's absolutely right. The Constitution and the financial regulations would prevent any disposal of land, for example, without the appropriate approvals. So whilst this could set up the company, and that's a wholly owned company, actually any transfer of land, any assets going into it would all need to be agreed in the normal ways, which is either through the council or the cabinet, depending, or it could be through officer, but that's much smaller piece of land. So the sorts of sites you're talking about would all almost certainly all need full council approval.
Thank you, Chief Executive. The reason I raised it is it's not actually the process and financial regulations. It's more in the case of you compare the arrangements that we've got with BDC, which has actually been quite, well, I wouldn't say provocative, but it's not been without its challenge. And, you know, if you were to enter into a similar arrangement with another organisation, then, you know, again, those sort of questions could, it might even be the BDC, you know, who would be, you know, who are we to know what the outcome of the consultancy would be? So those are my concerns. You don't have to answer it now, Councillor Broadhead.
I'll just come in once again. put your mind at rest. I don't think we're stumbling in here into jumping into bed with a major developer to procure all of the sites across the area. I think, as I've kind of intimated through the rest of the presentation, this is more about where we put the investment for our regeneration. I think the likely outcome of this will be a wholly owned vehicle of the council, specifically to bring in that skill and experience, right, but then have the suitable agility underneath it to be able to look on each site on an individual basis about how where maybe we should take them in the future.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Lewis Allison.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one from me. So in point 13 of this paper, we've got a list of potential development sites. There's a line in it for Boscombe Sovereign Centre and the surrounding area, and it's only got 50 as the estimated homes to be delivered, which is significantly less than what the Towns Fund deal is aiming to deliver. So I just wanted to clarify what's changed there.
Councillor Broadhead.
Yeah, thank you. Nothing. I said exactly the same when this was kind of put in there, in that I'm sure, as you would agree, that our aspiration would be quite a lot more within that area at the moment. I think that figure is taken from some of the initial plans from part of the early stage of the Towns Fund deal. But, you know, precisely why we need to get a grip on this is to figure out what is viable, what isn't viable, how would we look to take that project forward to really maximise the potential. So I'd completely concur with you, Councillor Allison. If we get this properly, with Boscombe, not only do we want to regenerate it somewhere that people actually want to be, but we want to be creating a lot of new homes, but the right homes for the right people as well. That's precisely what we're trying to address here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vicky Slade.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a few questions, as you might expect. Councillor Broadhead, never like to miss the opportunity. I am slightly concerned that you didn't quite answer the question about the departure of Bill Cotton and the reorganisation, because I've seen the proposed new structure. I'm a bit unsure about why Regen is sitting where it's sitting, and I'm interested to know whether whether in your mind, and I know it's Graham's structure, but I'm sure he's influenced by your thinking, whether that's a temporary move pending the outcome of this, consultancy work, or whether it's permanent. I'm interested. I believe that there has already been some recent master planning done around Holes Bay, and obviously we've got that existing Heart of Poole stuff. And I'm just wondering whether that was a waste of time, or whether that master planning is going to be used. I'm also interested, I remember there being a lot of criticism from some members of the current administration about the content of the BDC business plan. So is there a driver there to not only look at the nature of the relationship, but actually the content of the plan in terms of the sites? Do we have a decision on the legality of the BDC expanding? And if that is exempt, then I'm happy to withdraw and get that privately, in whether it can work outside of Bournemouth. And I've then got questions around the paper around what we can deliver from regeneration of council sites. I'm sort of a little bit disappointed, because it feels like there's nothing new there. This is just a sort of summary document of various things we talked about for the last couple of years, which is great, but I'd like to see some more ambition. You talk a lot about the big plan and being really ambitious, but then it's all a little bit samey. You've got 400 houses on Turlin Moor, so I just want to clarify that subject to consultation, they will go ahead. We've got 300 houses on the Poole Civic Centre, so some clarification that there is an intention to build on at least part of that site. And is there any other innovation that you're thinking about in terms of council sites? I mean, I know for a fact that 20% of our garages in Bournemouth are empty. 20%, over 100. Now, I know they're HRA, but it's still regeneration. And if we can deliver more homes on garages like we did last week, that could be transformative. So where's the transformation and the innovation? And finally, where's Councillor Brooks and Councillor Barron tonight? Because I would have thought that they should be here. I can see Councillor Dunlop is here, But unless they've joined late, I'm really incredibly disappointed to see the 2 lead members for Christchurch and Poole not even at a meeting about regeneration in their towns. Thank you.
Councillor Broadhead, would you like to answer those in whichever order you choose?
I'll go through my scribbles, if I may, Chair. Thank you very much to Councillor Slade for your questions. First of all, with regard to the senior council structure, I completely agree. What has been released is an interim structure, and you're quite right. That will be a lot of the outcome of that will be dependent on a number of factors, not least how the chief executive wants to see his organisation, but also crucially what we do in a number of key areas. And you'll have seen one of my colleagues today announced that we're going to be recruiting new staff in other areas as well. I just nearly let something slip then. I didn't know whether it was public or not, so I managed to stop myself there just in case, having not read all of the emails. I was sat here. But yes, I completely agree. One of the outcomes of the piece of work clearly will be where do we put our investment in regeneration. But as I've said earlier on, there's a lot also that we do within the local authority as well. So we will need to think very, very carefully about how strategically we see the organisation. Interestingly, it's one of the other reasons that I'm so keen on pressing forward with this. I found, just to take regeneration as an example, some of the major projects that we've got at the moment are being spearheaded by some very, very good council staff, but very good council staff that aren't, their day job shouldn't be delivery of major multi-million-pound projects. And I often think, gosh, if you had the time back, think about what we could do with regard to the rest of the council operation. So I do think if you get this right, you can get the experience and the skills in that you require, and then we can unleash the council to do what the council does best. And let's take housing. Council is actually very, very good at delivering housing. It's very good at delivering economic development. But at the moment, we've got housing officers and economic development officers tied into major regeneration projects. So I think there's a bigger part there, but you're quite right. It is an interim arrangement at the moment. With regards to the BDC, you asked around the legal opinion. We are seeking counsel at the moment regarding that exact point about whether we can operate outside of the boundaries. But as I also mentioned earlier on, we have a new strategic partner within the BDC, and that is a very, very good time to be taking stock and going, right, what do we want to do on some of these sites? Do we really want to ramp some of them up? Do we are some of these sites in the option agreement should or shouldn't they be there? So again, it's all come together at just the right time for us to have a much bigger strategic conversation about the regeneration sites that are in there, as well as outside of the option agreement as well. And again, that's a bit of work that's been undertaken at the moment. And finally, I'll come back to the point that she said, well, there's kind of nothing new here. Where's the fundamental change? I'd slightly disagree. We're at a precipice at the moment where we've got, in council-owned sites alone, £1 billion of GDV. Not changing would be doing the same as what we've always done and silo it and draw some master plans up and then see what pops out the other end, which quite often is, oh, actually not much. The BDC, as we all know, has its benefits and it certainly has its flaws. But outside of the BDC, how many major redevelopment council-led projects have we seen over the last 10 years? Not very many. So it's quite clear that if we want to operate at that scale, we do need to be doing something different. This is something different. This is quite innovative. And this is about structure as well. So you made the comment about the lead members. The lead members have been really involved in this process, but we're not actually talking about individual sites here. We're about assuring the deliverability of the sites in general. And this is a structure piece. So the reason that the other members regarding regeneration is because they are very site and geographic specific, and they'll form part of the process going forward. This is about working with the chief executive and senior staff, making sure that we have the capacity to deliver at the ambition that we want to.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Slade?
No, a fair few things not answered, but unexpected. No, not unexpected. Around the sites that were talked about in Poole, the Turley-Moor and the Civic Centre specifically.
Apologies, Chair. I'll come back on those quickly because I did actually scribble that down. Turley-Moor, as Councillor Slade knows, we've made a commitment that we want to do consultation properly there. That is an expectation, and that process is now underway so that we can actually do some real engage. This is a site which is tremendously important to the local people there, and we can't do that against them. That we've got to do that with them. So that consultation will be an absolutely massive part taking that site forward. You also mentioned some of the other master plans that we've got around. I mean, there's no such thing as a waste of time. There's a lot of work that has been done on all of these. However, one of the things when we've been meeting with lots of major developers around the country, because we've interviewed a number of them and said, well, what can we do down here to really turbocharge our regeneration? We've got some really interesting ideas on that. One of the things a number of them said is, whatever you do, don't go away and draw a master plan and then decide that you want to bring us in later. Because, you know, the first thing we'll do, we'll redraw that master plan because we put deliverability and viability at the heart of it. So I think there's a lot of work that's been done. Obviously, there's a lot of work that we want to take forward, and that will form part of that process. But if we are going to potentially bring in partners, if we are going to maybe do a lot more ourselves via this outside company this company that we own with the right skills, the very worst thing we could do is to tell them what we think should happen first. That's the problem we're actually trying to fix.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Okay, Councillor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned in your ambition the redevelopment of the BIC, which is a very large undertaking there. Does this also include the land, the legacy from the Regional Development Board, the old Winterbourne Hotel site and the grassy knoll? Would that all be included in that redevelopment of the BIC? And if you are going to talk about redeveloping the site, does that mean you're not going to look at any refurbishment for the BIC until it's pulled down? I presume you're talking about pulling it down and rebuilding.
Councillor Broadhead, yeah, please go ahead.
I'll jump into that one. I think there's been pretty much cross-party unanimity regarding the fact that if we really want to punch not just at our weight but above our weight, a comprehensive redevelopment of the BIC area is pretty much a necessity. And of course, Councillor Edwards, if you're going to do that, then you wouldn't just take it in isolation. Of course, you're going to look at the wider area. There has been a process that's been undertaken, started by the previous administration, to look at this in detail. They've just concluded the REBA 1 process, which looked at a number of different options for that site, and we were just about to look at whether to commence the REBA 2 process, which goes into further detail. We paused that precisely because rather than, as I've just said, rather than do a master plan and then figure out how to deliver it afterwards, this would be an ideal opportunity to take that work forward and to work it up into a really viable solution that actually works. So it's one of the things that I envision, if we did go ahead with this, would form the basis of it. I don't know the answer as to whether that would preclude any interim refurbishment, because it really depends on what the outcome of that process is. If it was something where we go, no, actually we've got a deliverable project that we can get stuck into immediately, then that would be wasted money. If the result of that is that you want to phase it over a number of years in order for that viability, then there may be an argument there. But this is precisely the stuff they'll be looking at. One thing I can say is that, and I think everyone would agree on this call, this is one of the really key sites which we really want to get on with.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't actually recall anybody asking for my view on the BIC. But if you say it's got cross-party support, then Councillor Broadhead, fair enough. Councillor Leslie Deadman.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, naturally enough, being, I think, the only person here from Christchurch, I'm not sure. I just picked up that our civic office is down on the list, and by the dwellings to be provided, you've got to be confirmed. But I don't know, I'm sure you are aware that not long ago, when we were a borough council, we did an extremely interesting and detailed piece of work on how we could ourselves sell the civic office and turn it into an absolutely wonderful area. It's a very big site. And I'm interested to know if you're going to be informed by that previous piece of work, which, you know, there were pros and cons with it, and it might have been more of its day than it would be now. But certainly that's my first question, that will that be in any way informing consultants? And the second thing is on page, I think it's 17, Councillor Broadhead, there's a mention of ward councillors will be consulted, which is very cheering, except that Christchurch would like all of us to be consulted. I'm sure I speak for all the other councillors, because although the civic offices look as though they're only in, I think it's, I'm not quite sure what ward it's in, it's just over mine. But yeah, I think it's a bit bigger, that particular thing, than just the ward councillors. So I'd really like to be assured that we can all put our oar in the best possible manner to that. So that's my 2 questions there, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And Councillor Dedman will be delighted to know that, geek that I am, I was poring over those plans looked at a few years ago, only the other evening, and
Yes.
and they're really interesting. And
Yeah.
again, you know, as I sound like a broken record, we're at just a stage with a number of these sites where loads of work has been done. Where we can really get on with them if we can make sure that we can actually get on and deliver them. So again, this will be one of the first sites. In fact, the consultants are already looking both at the previous plans and the aspirations for that, because there's some potential site assembly there, as you know. And I'm really excited about that one. I you know, to go off on a tangent, that's a beautiful bit. It's not far from where I am as well, and it's not very accessible at the moment, and yet it's such a beautiful part of the river that it doesn't really have very much public realm, and I think there's a really good opportunity to bring public realm in there as well. So so first of all, yes, that's very much on the list, and again will be one of the sites. Secondly, with regards to involving all Christchurch councillors, Councillor Dedman, we're all Christchurch councillors now. Of course, the ward councillors will be very involved in it, but in the nicest way, I have as much interest in this as you do in one of the neighbouring wards, as with the chair here, I'm sure, because all of these sites are key to the success of the whole area. So we'll be involving as many people as possible.
Oh, thank you. That's very cheering. And I'm sure that's recorded.
Thank you very much. Councillor Howell.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to cover firstly the BIC. I mean, the thing about the BIC is that you can talk generally about cross-party support, but there's no such thing when at such an early stage. You know, what's important is that, you know, as a council, work towards achieving something that the majority of councillors will think is a good thing, and have a process for, you know, involving people, not just occasionally, but, you know, along the way. I mean, it really needs a group of cross-party group of councillors who are really interested in the subject, you know, to be on the working party. You know, I mean, my personal, you know, I do think it needs to be completely razed to the ground. I think it can maybe be done in stages. I do think it would be a disaster if it ends up going back to the Bournemouth council plan of building a hotel on the site next to the big car park. I think the place for a, you know, we don't want another mid-grade business hotel of the type of the Hilton. We want something that is special and interesting, and it should be right on the cliff front, looking over the water. So, and the other thing about the BIC, which it was taking a direction, I mean, it wasn't my project, that I wasn't particularly happy with, is that it was being treated as in isolation, and the danger is that it would be treated as a project to make it work as a facility in its own right, rather than pulling in what should happen just across the road in the area where the Smugglers Cove is, and down into you know, the Pavilion and Westover Road. All that area needs to be treated as a coherent whole to deliver, in my view, a kind of cultural quarter in Bournemouth. And people need to be encouraged to leave the BIC and go to these other places, and from those other places to go to the BIC. So to create that kind of dynamism. You know, and the danger is that, you know, if it's a silo mentality, you try and keep everybody in the BIC because you're trying to make money, make the BIC work, and silo doesn't work. It doesn't spread the money around. The second point I wanted to make was in relation to master planning. I totally agree that we should not be doing detailed master plans, and that was never our intention. But there is merit in doing very top level visionary master plans, which set out roughly where you want to go on the site, because developers fundamentally are not that interested in what they build and mostly just want to build things that they can make money easily with, i.e. usually private housing. We have, we're a public authority, we have other objectives. In Poole, we've got to replace a leisure centre. We need to, we can be getting on with the specification that we want to see in that leisure centre, and that if we did that, then that would inform the sites that it could go on, and that kind of work. Also, Councillor O'Neill has raised suggested that we should have some kind of cultural facility somewhere within the south of the town centre in Poole. As I think he wanted it to go in the harbour, but some landmark cultural facility. That's not something that's going to come forward from a development partner. We need to be the ones saying, these are the facilities we want. So we should be doing some work to develop that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor?
Yeah, no, I will. I mean, I don't disagree with much of what Councillor Howell says. I mean, clearly we want to have strategic control, but frankly, I want to have my cake and eat it. We want to have that strategic control and set that vision, but then crucially, we want to absolutely ensure that it happens. And I think if the easiest thing we could do right now with this extra £2 million in regeneration investment is to go, let's plough it all into the local authority. And you mentioned the BIC, and it has to be connected with everything else. Absolutely. Do you happen if we just employed a number of other council officers to try and get this underway? It probably wouldn't. We clearly need the skills and experience to operate at a scale and level that we haven't been able to do before, but we also need to maintain that strategic control. That's why the direction of travel here is not to go away and find a Taylor Wimpey and then say, there you go, kind of offload our ambition to them and let them deliver it. We want and need the skills of those that have done this before. We want to do them under the kind of the control and the direction that we collectively as councillors set. That's the thrust of all of this, to make sure that we are not thinking about delivery and viability last, but equally we're not thinking about vision and strategy last. We need to think about both of them right at the very beginning. And too many of the schemes, when I inherited this this portfolio, where I went in, the very first question I asked them at a number of these stages, because you're quite right, a number of master plans and things have been done, is how are we going to deliver this? And I was told again and again, we'll worry about that at the end. If you worry about that at the end, you will never ever deliver them. So we're now at the stage with a number of these sites where we can get some people in that know what they're talking about under the strategic direction of us and try to take them forward. And I really do feel that this is the direction of travel that we should be taking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I move on, Councillor Howell? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, no other members wishing to speak, so I'm going to close this debate down now. It's been very interesting. One thing I would like to raise is that we're talking about a lot of development here, but what we haven't talked about is the planning that we need to have in place in order for that to work. And that's where we have a local plan, and that's being worked on at the moment. And just to go back to Councillor Leslie Dedman's point, yes, there are representatives working on drafting the local plan with the planning team at the moment, and it does make me wonder how we can actually move ahead, with some of this development without understanding what's in the town centre visions or whatever we're going to have for some very key developments. But it does sort of put a lot of emphasis on getting the local plan agreed and getting it on the tables as soon as we possibly can. I don't know if you want to comment any more on that.
I do, and actually thank you for the prompt. It was something I meant to raise a little bit earlier. It's not just the local plan, Chair. It's making sure that our planning function also matches the level of ambition that not just we have, but that collectively we have over the area. One of the things that's really interesting is that over the last 12 to 18 months, the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area has seen one of the biggest increases in planning applications of anywhere in the country. Now, I think that's a really positive news story that shows that people, there's investment happening, people want to bring their business here, and there's lots going on. But clearly, we haven't been able to have that capacity or the organisation to be able to match that. And that's why I'm delighted that the next paper I'll be taking in April, in continuation of a theme, is the future of planning in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, that will talk over a number of those issues, how we can make sure that the structure we have going forward fits the aspiration that we have, a little bit like this paper. The plans we've got in place are dealing with what we've got in front of us, but also that we've clearly got a backlog and how we're using some of the investment in that area to fix that as well. So, but it is all interlinked, because there's absolutely no point in having all of these aspirations if your local plan and your planning system doesn't match, and that's April's paper.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I have to say, it's really exciting to hear that all these plans are going ahead. I mean, it's great to be talking about, the changes ahead for us and some challenges there, but, really exciting times. It's nice to think that we might be able to afford it. Anyway, with that, we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is actually a local plan working group update. So it fits in rather nicely. I'm going to be very brief, but the working group has been established to look at the local plan, working alongside planning officers. And at the meeting we had about 2 weeks ago, Councillor Mike Brooke was elected as the chair, and Councillor Kieran Wilson was elected as vice chair. The working group were given some really good presentations on a thing called the Urban Potential Study. And in this study, the potential sites for development within the urban part of the conurbation were identified in a number of different ways. When the tool that they're using to show all these sites will eventually come into the public domain. So when there's eventually a consultation on this, the public will be able to drill down into this tool and see exactly what sites are open up for debate in their particular areas, their wards, and it gives a really detailed, a lot of granularity to the analysis that's been done. I have to say it was a superb presentation that we received. But just to be looking at the very top level of the discussion, basically the urban study is looking at the targets that we are set by government for residential accommodation. They're looking at the number of units that they can currently identify in a number of different ways. And then they're looking to see if actually the sites that have identified are sufficient enough to meet the targets that have been set. And surprise, surprise, the answer to that question is no, there are insufficient sites. And at the moment, the shortfall is around roughly 9,000 units shortfall. So the question then obviously naturally comes out of that is, well, if we're short on the sites, how do we meet our targets? Well, there's a couple of obvious potential answers to that, but the one of them that is probably worth focusing on, and that is, can we build a little bit higher? Currently the analysis that's been done is using current planning rules regarding how high you can actually build. So one of the things that the working group will be looking at in the future is the potential for possibly building a little bit higher. Let me just see if I can find some notes that we took on this. Yeah, so there were no hard recommendations came out of the meeting, but we are sort of working towards some recommendations, looking possibly at increasing building heights in the urban area in order to meet the targets, in order to perhaps avoid us having to focus too much on any potential for development in the greenbelt. That was just one area. Another area is to look at the capacity we have for SANGs, because we understand that there is an issue here about development and the requirement sometimes to put a SANG in place. And so we would be looking at the potential for providing SANG capacity somewhere as a result of this study that's ongoing. And another issue that is related to the availability of space is the plans for future travel and the arrangements and the aims of creating different travel arrangements and the relationship that has onto the amount of space that's available for development. So there's 3 themes have come out of the meeting to date. I think we found it a very interesting meeting. I think the planning staff found it fairly interesting, and we have another meeting in, I think, about 2 weeks' time to take it further forward. But once we've got some recommendations, we will be presenting these to the board in due course. Anybody got any comments or questions that they'd like to raise on that? Councillor Tony O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you for that update. I suppose a number of questions jump out in terms of the development of the local plan. Post-COVID, or even during COVID, we're seeing a move to the requirement for more green space. We're seeing an increasing need to consider sustainable building materials, sustainable energy, green energy. And also we're seeing nationally identified move to the requirement for some space for home working and comfortable working from home. What's being considered there? And the other part of the question, the 2 parts really. One is, are you looking at the borders between counties, so BCP and say Dorset, to see if there is any joint building opportunity by the release of land? And the last one is a more considered one, is that a lot of planning currently within BCP is done on a project by project basis. And sadly, in some instances, that does dramatically change the nature of a street scene, which seems to be being ignored in some circumstances. What consideration will be given to that as the plan advances? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I can't really give you a definitive answer on any of that, I'm afraid. You know, we're as the Overview and Scrutiny Board, what we're doing is reviewing pieces of work that is coming through to formulate the local plan, and the only piece of work that's come through so far it was this one on the urban study. But just touching on a couple of the issue, certainly in terms of there is a duty to cooperate across borders, and I'm sure that the planning team will be looking at that as part of the plan. More green space, I think that, yes, that certainly does come into their considerations in formulating the plans. And the other one was about the impact on streets scene. Yes, this is about urban design and will form part of the planning team's responsibility in putting the recommendations for planning in general. You know, this all forms part of the local plan, so I think you can see all those areas will be addressed at some point, but I can't tell you when or any more specifics about it. Sorry, that's a bit of a weak answer, Tony, but that's all I can tell you.
No, that's all. I mean, I appreciate it's early stage, but I just highlight those factors because they're all opportunities in areas that require some consideration. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. I had a similar position for my question around the duty to cooperate. That I don't think that the strategic planning group, which runs across the 2 councils, has ever met. And I'm just wondering what the working group is able to do to sort of put a bit of pressure on to bring that forward. And also, one of the ways that the duty to cooperate could be thank you, Councillor Broadhead, for confirming it met last week. That's great. But one of the areas is around new towns, and I know the government is really keen on these, and I don't know whether there's an opportunity for us to go back and explore that, and what the working group is able to do to influence that. The other issue I've got is around the progress of the plan. When they started, our trajectory and the trajectory of the Dorset local plan were parallel. Obviously, the Dorset local plan has gone out to consultation to a lot of discontent amongst the public. And I'm just wondering if you've got any update for us on what our timings are likely to be and how we're going to be more mindful of the problems that they've had in terms of how it's consulted with the public.
Okay. Again, I can't really give you answers on all of these things. As I said, I'm not representing the planning team here. We've only had one meeting and we've reviewed this urban study. That's all we've done. But I think it might be worth just asking Councillor Broadhead, as he's the portfolio holder for strategic planning issues, and he might be able to give some steer on a couple of those issues, particularly the duty to cooperate across borders. Can you help, Phil? Sorry.
Yes, I can, Chair. Thank you very much. I definitely wasn't trying to put down some food just then. You're quite right. That work is now underway. As I'd mentioned in the chat bar, we had our meeting of the strategic advice. It's a very long-winded name, but it's both of us councils coming together to talk about our local plan issues, but in particular that duty to cooperate, which was very central to that discussion, as well as the new town discussion, which I've been a big advocate for a while. It's a start of a big piece of work. In many ways, I think it's probably to our advantage that Dorset are slightly ahead of us on this, because they can't do anything, particularly around duty to cooperate until we cooperate. And clearly we need to wait until we have formalised exactly what our housing shortfall is going to be before being able to finalise that discussion. But I think we've got a great working relationship with Dorset Council. Sometimes with these duty to cooperate, it can be you can't see mine, I can't, and it's both in kind of trench warfare. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we've got a very good working relationship, but clearly this is one of the really key parts that the working group will have to be looking at as well.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I mean, I just want to come back to what the purpose of the working group is. It is an overview and scrutiny working group, and we're reviewing bits of work that are coming forward from the planning team. So that's really the extent of it, and then to take any concerns or support that we have for that to this overview and scrutiny board, so we can bring it as early as we possibly can for matters to be addressed by this board. So we're not there driving the process or controlling the plan. That's not the remit of the overview and scrutiny board in this. So it's of a great interest, but what I would encourage you've come up with a couple of thoughts and ideas. Any member, if they've got any concerns or issues, for example, the ones that Tony O'Neill has just raised, just drop the planning team, Mark Axford, who's leading this local plan generation, just drop them a line and just, let them know what it is in your mind. I know they'd be delighted to hear from you. As soon as they can get these views and they can address them, then the less hassle we'll have in getting this local plan through and finally adopted, which is a massive task for them. So I think we've got Councillor Andy Hadley. Just one more, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Ever so quickly then, Chair. Interesting. Councillor Neil mentioned cross county, and I thought he was going to go to Hampshire, but he didn't. So we do need to remember our border does now extend to Hampshire as well, and obviously New Milton to Walkford and Highcliffe. There's significant links there. For me, partly that's about transport, and for example, the transforming travel routes don't go as far as Wimborne, and they really need to. So how we reconnect some of the or better connect some of those links. But the other one, I'm afraid, I'm going to come back to is sewage. So sewage and drainage. And ensuring that we have sustainable drainage and it doesn't get mixed with the sewage to extend our problem. because I'm not that keen on some of the ways in which we spent the money to reduce the nitrogen load in the rural area, rather than not consuming at source but reducing at source our problems here. So whether there's a strategy within the local plan for extending our capacity to deal with both drainage and sewage.
I can confirm that that was something that was mentioned at the working group meeting. What the answer is, I couldn't tell you, but certainly it's something they're cognizant of and are certainly looking at it, if that's of any help. But again, as I said just now, you know, any particular issues like that, if you could let the team know, just to make sure that they are addressing them. So with that, if you don't mind, I'd like to close that particular item and move on. Councillor Slade, sorry, did you want to say something else?
Apologies, old hand.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll close that and move on to agenda item 8. I beg your pardon. Where have we got the future plan? We were going to bring that in. Yeah, we had to bring the future plan through from this afternoon's meeting because we were running out of time. So I'm just going to quickly go over it. And this is for our meeting on the 1st of April. The agenda at the moment looks, now we don't have a portfolio holders brief at the next meeting, and the reason for that is there are such a lot of major papers coming through in April to April's cabinet meeting, and so both of our meetings on that day will be focusing in the main on papers coming through to cabinet. So the ones that we've identified at the moment that we think that will be the most useful in terms of scrutiny are the sale of the Christchurch bypass car park, and that was requested by one of the Christchurch councillors, the management and development of leisure centres, BCP homelessness strategy, and in parallel with that, another item that I was asked to add to that would be the housing strategy. So we'll be dealing with both of those papers now. The council fleet replacement programme and sustainable fleet management strategy, the corporate asset management plan, the highways asset management policy and strategy, and that one will be of particular interest to Councillor Trent, who wants some more detail on how we fix our roads. And then lastly, the regulatory services and licensing enforcement policy. So you can see some fairly meaty scrutiny papers coming through there. Unless anybody's got any comments that they'd like to raise on that, if you're broadly in agreement with that, and things unfortunately do change, papers get delayed or whatever, and it might not happen or may get substituted with something else that comes in urgently, but that does look at the moment to be what we'll be looking at. So unless anybody has got anything to add to that, could I just ask if you want to indicate? Yes, Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, it's just a quick inquiry, really. We'll all have had an email earlier on today to say that the dates of the next council meeting has been changed because of the upcoming by-elections, etc. Does that mean that the date of this meeting is likely to possibly be changed?
Not that I'm aware of, and I don't see any reason, provided the cabinet meeting goes ahead in mid. I think is it the 10th of April? I can't remember the date. 13th of April, something like that. Then I don't see why it should change.
No, I couldn't quite understand why the council meeting's been changed, because that's in the middle of April as well.
Okay, I think Chief Executive's put his hand up, and so is monitoring officer as well. Perhaps they'd like to clarify.
Thanks, Graham.
So I'll let Susan go first. Sure.
Yeah, please, Graham. Thank you.
Chief Executive, I was probably going to say exactly the same thing as you, so please go ahead.
So we're being too polite. Thank you, Chairman. The answer is the cabinet meeting is barely into the pre-election period, and the papers will have been sent out before the pre-election period starts. So the subject matter, etc., will have been concluded. The council meeting was scheduled for, I believe, the 27th of April, which was just 1 week before. I think that's too close. to what are likely to be some fairly well challenged elections, I think, in the place. So we felt it was prudent to bring forward the council meeting. We think the cabinet meeting's fine because the papers will have been published well beforehand.
Thanks for that, Graham. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Vicky, you're content now, David, are you? Thank you. Councillor Vicky Slade, you wanted to?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I just wanted to raise something that we've discussed over the last few weeks, and that is actually the way in which the Overview and Scrutiny Board operates at the moment. It's reliance and constant sort of having to chop and change according to cabinet, and the potential for moving it to looking way in the future at perhaps stuff that's on the forward plan for 6-9 months down the line. I think if we don't bring it up tonight, we'll just keep talking about it every month and we'll never change. I just feel that we're running ONS because this is how it was run under the previous administration, and even then we were saying it didn't work. So, you know, can we at some point have a robust conversation about how we do this better, please?
Yeah. I'm not sure I agree with you entirely about it being done in the same way. I mean, well, we have introduced the portfolio briefs, but whether that's actually giving us what we need in terms of overview and scrutiny, there is a little bit of a question. They're for sure, they're really interesting, but whether it's contributing to the overview aspects for council, I'm not quite sure.
Just for clarity, when I talked about doing it the way it was done under the previous, what I meant was the coupling of ONS with cabinet and it being very driven by the cabinet agenda. I think the portfolio holder briefs have been a really interesting experiment. Some have been very successful, others less so, and I think that often depends on where our interest lies. But I just think we can do better.
Yeah, okay, I think I would agree with that. And what I would ask members is that, you know, we do seem to be reliant on portfolio holders briefs now, and also the scrutiny of cabinet papers. But I would really like the Overview and Scrutiny Board to look at things that really interest their residents and come through to them, that they're concerned. It could be a very minor issue, or when you compare it with an overall council strategy or policy, but it could be something that's really important to your residents. And I would urge you to think about that. And if you want to, you know, put it on the agenda, then please do. You know, we don't have to be driven by what's on the cabinet plan. So if you've got any thoughts about that, please let me have them. So having said that, I see that Mark Howe wants to talk about it, but I think in view of the time that we've been going today, and I don't know about you, but I'm getting a bit tired as well, I would like to talk about this again at our next meeting on the 1st of April, when we start formulating our next agenda. So, Councillor Howe.
Yeah, it's just an item, but if you want to postpone that until next time, that's fine.
I'm happy for you to make a suggestion now.
Yeah, I know you know, people in my ward, certainly, I think more broadly in Poole, would like the council to develop a plan as to how Poole Quay can be improved and brought up to the kinds of level of quality in terms of a tourist asset that we should expect in this conurbation. You know, there's always a danger that everything Bournemouth attracts all the attention, but the quay is much valued by many people, and its basic infrastructure is really poor and outdated. You know, for example, the road there, it has a road which is like a proper road dipped with curves, which makes it very unsuitable for markets and other things like that, and it would really benefit from an approach in itself, and because there's not a great amount of development opportunity in the council to make money, it keeps getting postponed. And I think if we can somehow provoke some interest in that, that would be good.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I think, I don't know, I'm getting a strange echo here, but yeah, that's the thing. And if you wouldn't mind, if we could just consider that, you've tabled it now. People are aware of the ideas, so maybe we can discuss that one in our next meeting. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I don't see any more hands up. Claire Johnson has just put a hand up. Sorry, I can't hear you, Claire.
Sorry, Chairman. It wasn't related to the forward plan, but I just wanted to mention, as I didn't have a record of it may be me, but for completeness, we didn't have any public issues for this meeting.
Oh, okay. Did I miss it out at the beginning?
I didn't have a record of it, I'm afraid, Chairman. It may have been me.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. All right, then, if we could then just go to the last item on the agenda, which is now future meeting dates. And if you, unless anybody's got any problems with that, we'll just note those. Councillor Slade, did you want to say something else? No? Okay. Thank you. All right, in that case, we've finished. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.